Chapter 1147. Excuse me. Professor Ming, is he your colleague? A female student asked with a glimmer of hope. No, he's my coach, Ming Xiu replied. As he didn't know if Zhou one could expose his identity, he didn't say his name. Coach. Many images suddenly appeared in the girls' minds. Time, night, location, training room, people, Professor Ming and the male coach. Professor Ming, who was only wearing a tracksuit, took off his shirt because it was too hot, revealing his sweaty, solid chest. The shameless coach had stuck close to Ming Xiu from behind, with one hand on his waist and the other on Ming Xiu's hand that was holding the sword. He had even pretended to say that he wanted to correct Ming Xiu's actions, but in the end, it's not like this. It's definitely not like this. The girl from before didn't believe that Ming Xiu would be such a person. She asked eagerly, Professor Ming, your relationship with him isn't what we think, right? Ming Xiu imagined that they didn't believe that Zhou one was his coach, so he said, That's right. Tomorrow's sword technique was named by Coach. Without Coach, there wouldn't be tomorrow's sword technique. The tomorrow's sword technique is actually the name of love. The girls felt as if they had been struck by lightning, and they felt as if their faith had instantly collapsed. Ming Xiu clearly wasn't in the mood to talk to them. She pulled Zhou one and said, Coach, this isn't the place to talk. Let's find a place with no one around and have a good chat. Where there's no one, let's talk. The women were petrified on the spot, and an indescribable image appeared in their minds. Zhou one left the flower bed with Ming Xiu. Tsukuyami followed silently behind them and didn't do anything out of line. Ming Xiu found a separate lounge and used a soundproof companion beast. He looked at Tsukuyami and saw Zhou one nod slightly. Only then did he chat with Zhou one and tell him about what had happened in the Federation in recent years. In the past 5 years, the Dimension hadn't started a cube ranking battle, nor had it chosen a new king of Earth. However, there are already quite a lot of Guardians on Earth, and the League of Defender has been established. Many members of the Senate are from the League of Defender. Therefore, many federal decisions will be influenced by the League of Defender. The inexplicable death of the previous president. Many people suspected that it was related to the League of Defender, because the previous president was anti-Guardian. Today's president, Hui Haifeng, did not oppose the Guardian on the surface, but he has been working hard in secret, hoping to get rid of the influence of the League of Defender on the Federation and the House of Lords. But from the looks of it now, the effect wasn't good. Although Hui Haifeng had developed the mythical fluid, it was already very difficult to advance to the mythical stage with it. It was even more difficult to advance to the Terror grade. The current Federation was actually still controlled by the League of Defender. There was no lack of powerful Terror grade Guardians in the League of Defender. In 5 years, many Guardians had grown up. You used the mythical fluid? Zhou one looked at Ming Xiu and saw that his body under his clothes was in a strange crystalline state like jade. Ming Xiu nodded slightly. I'd rather become a monster than bow to those Guardians. Where's Qiuyan? Zhou one asked again. He also used the mythical liquid, so he's stronger than me, Ming Xiu replied. Zhou one didn't know what to say. Although he knew that humans had the possibility of advancing to the mythical stage, that path was too difficult. Apart from him, Zhou one had only seen Xia Zhihuang walk over. However, it was hard to say if Xia Zhihuang had truly succeeded. After all, he had ultimately borrowed the power of the Guardian in the wood. It was impossible to verify if he had advanced to the mythical stage. Who has the final say in the League of Defender now? Zhou one asked. There are 4 Guardian Heavenly Kings in the League of Defender. They are Blood Shaman, Cave Era, Hermit, and Great Sky Fiend. They are all Terror-grade existences, but they aren't the true leaders of the League of Defender. Up to now, no one has seen the true leader's true appearance. All they know is that the Guardians of the League of Defender call him immortal, Ming Xiu said. After a pause, Ming Xiu continued. Apart from the League of Defender, an organization that specializes in hunting Guardians has appeared in the League. It's called the Holy Spirit Association. The entire organization is very mysterious, and it's very difficult to find traces of them. The president of the Holy Spirit Association is Ye, who previously occupied first place on the cube. From your tone, you seem very dissatisfied with the Holy Spirit Association. There doesn't seem to be a problem with them hunting guardians, right? Zhou Wen asked. Ming Xiu sighed and said, "It's fine if it's just hunting guardians, but they don't differentiate between good and bad. They don't care if the humans who contract guardians are good or bad. They kill all of them. Even the humans who contract guardians aren't spared. I really can't agree with their actions. What's the difference between such indiscriminate killing and those devils?" Zhou Wen shook his head and didn't say anything else. With Zhong Zia's personality, he might really do such a thing. After a moment of silence, Zhou Wen asked about the people he cared about. Ming Xiu had always been paying attention and told Zhou Wen one by one. "Yeah, I'd been brought back to the family and was doted on by Tianzua. What was surprising was that even Tianzua doted on Ya. Yeah, it was now like the family's little princess. She got whatever she wanted. Li Xian had been wandering around. Occasionally, when he returned to Luoyang, he would visit Zhou Wen, but in fact, he was visiting Ye. As for who was impersonating the family Zhou Wen, Ming Xiu wasn't sure either. All he felt was that he looked extremely similar. There was no way to tell the difference from his appearance. His bearing and abilities were also very similar to Zhou Wen's. Unless one was particularly familiar with Zhou Wen, it was almost impossible to tell them apart. The chick and antelope had also been settling down. The antelope hadn't changed much, but the chick was now the size of an eagle. The last time Ming Xiu went, he happened to see it burn a mythical creature to death at Chess Mountain with a mouthful of flames. Feng Shuyan had been cultivating with Ming Xiu all these years. With the help of Ming Xiu's peerless life providences, the two of them improved rapidly. Of course, it was mainly because their talent and hard work were rare in the world. Wang Lu had officially taken over the Wang family, but no matter where she went, she would bring her younger sister. Wang Chan Wei Gu replaced Shin Yuqi as the director of the Special Inspection Bureau. However, the Special Inspection Bureau had already fallen out with its original owner, the Six Families, and became a blade in the hands of the League of Defender. Many people from the Six Families had joined the League of Defender, but other than the Cape family, the other families were very repulsed by the League of Defender. The Zhang family had a rule that as long as one contracted a guardian, their names would be removed from the family tree. As the two of them were chatting, Zhou Wen suddenly sensed that someone was secretly approaching the lounge they were in. After carefully sensing it, he realized that it wasn't a pure human, but a human who had contracted a guardian. At that moment, he was wearing a guardian armor and walking towards the lounge. Chapter 1148. Zhou Wen frowned slightly. The guardian was clearly targeting them, and there was a high chance that he was looking for Ming Xiu. Zhou Wen had been missing for so many years and had just returned inland. Not many people knew him. Even if an enemy recognized him, they shouldn't have taken action so quickly. At the very least, they should have investigated his current situation. The guardian didn't deliberately hide his aura. As he approached, Ming Xiu sensed his arrival. The guardian stopped in front of the lounge. Although the door was closed, it didn't seem to affect his vision at all. He looked at Ming Xiu through the door and said, "Tomorrow, swordsman, I've heard a lot about you. Do you dare fight me?" With the guardian's arrival, many students discovered him. They whispered from afar, but they didn't dare approach. Clearly, they all knew the guardian. "I wouldn't dare," Ming Xiu said with a smile. Tomorrow's wind mark is known as the Sword and Saber Paragon. No one can match him when it comes to swords and sabers. I also use a sword, and I believe my sword techniques are passable. If I can't win in 10 strikes, it'll be considered my loss, the guardian continued. You've already won. Ming Xiu was no longer the competitive youth from back then. He spoke casually and was not moved at all. I never expected the famous Tomorrow swordsman to be a coward. He doesn't even have the courage to accept the challenge. From the looks of it, the so-called invincible Tomorrow swordsman is just an exaggeration used by humans to comfort themselves. A sword technique created by humans ultimately can't be shown in public. The guardian continued provoking. This time, Ming Xiu didn't back down. He didn't care about his reputation, but there were some things that he absolutely couldn't allow others to sully. "Coach, please wait a moment. I'll be back soon. Ming Xiu said to Zhou one before getting up and pushing the door open. The students watching from afar were somewhat excited when they saw Ming Xiu come out. The guardian's name was Judge, and the person who contracted him was Buzz. He was a very famous guardian of the Cape family and a member of the League of Defender. Although he hadn't advanced to the Terror grade, he was already somewhat famous in the Federation with his Sword of Judgment. Ming Xiu once killed a branch leader of the League of Defender and destroyed a plan of the League of Defender in the East District. That guardian was also a member of the Cape family. Although it was rumored that Ming Xiu had once killed a Terror grade dimensional creature, no one had seen it with their own eyes. The League of Defender had also analyzed Ming Xiu and believed that he was still at the mythical stage and hadn't advanced to the Terror grade. The rumors of him killing a Terror creature weren't credible. Buzz's eyes lit up when he saw Ming Xiu. If he could defeat Ming Xiu, not only would he be avenging the Cape family, but he would also be able to make his name known throughout the Federation. Due to the battle when Zhou was conferred the title of Emperor, humans were very repulsed by Guardians. Even if they could accept half-humans like Ye, even if they were willing to treat mutated humans who used mythical fluid as part of the human race, they were unwilling to accept pure humans who contracted Guardians. This makes humans very resistant to the League of Defender, and it also annoys the humans who contract with the League of Defender. They had clearly obtained great power, but they were unable to gain the recognition of their own race. The fame and expectations that humans like Ming Xiu, who used mythical fluid, obtained were something that a contractor like Buzz couldn't enjoy. Even within the Cape family, the young people of Royal College were more willing to worship Ming Xiu than Buzz and his guardian. When the outside world mentioned him, they would only mention the name Nephilic Judge. Ordinary people couldn't even remember Buzz's name. Buzz was looking forward to seeing how the people who admired Ming Xiu would react after he defeated him. Buzz had been looking forward to this ever since Ming Xiu accepted Royal College's invitation. He had already hired a professional analyst in the League of Defender to help him analyze the situation. His ability had a certain restraining effect on Ming Xiu. As long as Ming Xiu didn't advance to the Terror grade, his chances of winning were as high as 70%. Ming Xiu's Sword of Tomorrow would give others the illusion that they could block his sword, but if they really did block it, they would realize that the strike would come later than expected. The Sword of Judgment could slice through the fabrications and strike at the essence. Even if Buzz made a mistake, the Sword of Judgment could accurately block Ming Xiu's sword. Therefore, Ming Xiu was at an absolute disadvantage against him. Royal College's combat arena should be able to allow us to fight with all our might, Buzz said as he looked at Ming Xiu. There's no need. Let's do it here. Ming Xiu reached out and grabbed the hilt of his sword. Here. Buzz frowned slightly. This was a lounge, and there were students and tutors nearby. With their strength, they would probably implicate many people if they fought here. Royal College was the Cape family school after all. Buzz was also a member of the Cape family, so he naturally had scruples. He thought that Ming Xiu was trying to threaten him. Yes, here, Ming Xiu said as he unsheathed his sword. The moment the sword was unsheathed, Buzz's pupils constricted. He still wanted to retreat, but he only took half a step back before he stopped. Ming Xiu had already sheathed his sword. He turned around and pushed open the door before walking into the lounge behind him. It was only when Ming Xiu turned around and pushed open the door that the students and tutors nearby saw the sword flash and pierce through Buzz's abdomen. The wound on Buzz's abdomen split open, and blood immediately gushed out. He quickly covered the wound with his hand, and his face turned pale. He turned around and left without saying a word. He had to treat his injury immediately, or he would die here. The students watched in shock as Buzz retreated. When they looked at Ming Xiu again, they realized that he had already walked into the lounge, and they could only see the closed door. The sword kills first before it sees the light. This sword is too fast. Tomorrow's swordsman lives up to his name. The Nephilic Judge is considered a famous guardian, but he was defeated with one strike. This is too scary. Coach, I've kept you waiting, Ming Xiu said apologetically as he returned to the lounge. Your tomorrow's swordsmanship can be considered to be at the initial stage, Zhou said. If someone else said this, they would only be regarded as arrogant. However, when it came from Zhou Wan, Ming Xiu's eyes lit up. Coach, can you teach me what I should do in the future? Ming Xiu asked sincerely. Before Zhou Wan could speak, Tsukuyumi suddenly said, "Tomorrow is the next day. There are so many tomorrows. Which day is your tomorrow?" Ming Xiu was stunned when he heard this. His eyes stared straight ahead, but he wasn't looking at anything. It was as if he had lost his focus. He stood there motionless. Chapter 1149. In the Cape family's medical room, a man stood in front of the bed. His palm was glowing as he pressed on the wound on Buzz's abdomen. Buzz's wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It wasn't just the wound on his body. Even the wound on the guardian armor healed rapidly. Soon, the wound disappeared completely. "I'm incompetent. I'll have to trouble you to treat me personally," Buzz said as he stood up and bowed. The man retracted his palm and said calmly, "It's not your fault. Ming Xiu's swordsmanship has indeed reached an extremely high level. Not many people at the mythical stage can withstand his strike. This matter ends here. What happens in the future has nothing to do with you or the Cape family. Just do what you need to do." "Sir, are you going to do it yourself?" Buzz's body trembled as he hurriedly asked. He knew too well how terrifying this person was. Among the 4 directors of the League of Defender, although Hermit's reputation was not as great as that of Cave Era and Blood Shaman, anyone who knew him knew that this person might be more terrifying than Cave Era and Blood Shaman. "Do what you need to do," the Hermit said. "Yes, sir." Buzz hurriedly lowered his head. After sending the Hermit out, he met Belle, who had come to visit him. Belle looked at the Hermit curiously. Buzz quickly pulled her to the side and introduced her to the Hermit. "Sir, this is my niece, Belle." The Hermit nodded slightly and left the hospital without looking at Belle. "Uncle Buzz, who was that? You seem very afraid of him." Belle asked curiously. "Don't ask nonsense, kid. What are you doing here?" Buzz hurriedly stopped Belle and looked in the direction the Hermit had left. He heaved a sigh of relief when he realized that the Hermit had disappeared. "Uncle Buzz, you really have no conscience. I came to see you out of goodwill, but you still have such an attitude," Belle said angrily. "All right, my little lady, I'm fine. I won't die. Don't worry," Buzz said dotingly. "That Ming Xiu is really despicable. I used to admire him so much, but he actually wanted to kill you. Fortunately, you are fine," Belle said. Buzz shook his head and said, "He didn't want to kill me. Otherwise, my abdomen wouldn't have been injured. So that's how it is. In that case, he isn't too bad." Belle looked in the direction where the Hermit had gone. Seeing that there was no one there, she asked in a low voice, "Uncle Buzz, was that man from the League of Defender? You were so afraid of him. He must be a senior member of the League of Defender, right? I told you not to ask. Don't even mention anything about the League of Defender in the future, understand?" Buzz repeatedly reminded Belle. Belle agreed verbally, but she was thinking about something in her mind. After leaving the hospital, Belle found an excuse to return to school. When she arrived, she ran straight to the lounge where Zhou Wan and company were. Zhou Wan and Tsukuyumi sat in the lounge and chatted. Ming Xiu had been standing there motionless for quite a while. Due to Tsukuyumi's words, it was unknown what Ming Xiu had comprehended, but the power in his body was undergoing an earth-shattering change. This was an extremely dangerous moment, so Zhou had no choice but to guard him and prevent anyone from disturbing him. As he was chatting with Tsukuyumi, Zhou suddenly sensed that someone was walking towards the lounge. Furthermore, the footsteps were very hurried. He used Truth Listener to scan carefully and realized that the person who had come was the girl they had met a few times on campus. "Professor Ming, are you there?" Belle came to the lounge and knocked anxiously on the door. "What's the matter?" Zhou opened the door and asked, blocking it. "Leave quickly. The people from the League of Defender want to kill Professor Ming," Belle immediately said in a low voice when she saw Zhou. "Didn't they come just now?" Zhou said, "Uncle Buzz only wants to defeat Professor Ming. He has no intention of killing him. But the upper echelons of the League of Defender are different. They really want Professor Ming's life. It's best you leave quickly. Leave quietly and don't be discovered. I believe he won't take action on campus because of the Cape family's reputation. If you leave campus, you have to be careful." Before Belle could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by a sudden voice. Why should I care about the Cape family's reputation? The hermit's voice made Belle shiver. She turned her head, and indeed, she saw a familiar figure walking over from the corridor. He was wearing cloak-like clothes. Although it didn't completely cover his face, it was impossible to see him clearly. The hermit walked forward step by step. His speed wasn't fast, but there seemed to be a unique rhythm to his footsteps. Every step he took seemed to be stepping on a heartbeat, causing people to feel flustered and their hearts to beat faster. Belle took 2 steps back in fright. Joan pressed down on her shoulder and pulled her behind him. I've never seen you before. What's your name? Joan asked when he saw that the person looked unfamiliar. He definitely hadn't seen him before. The moment I contracted the Guardian, my name no longer has any meaning. The Guardian's name is my name. You can call me Hermit, the hermit said as he walked. Hermit, he's one of the 4 heavenly kings of the League of Defender. Belle exclaimed softly as her face turned pale. There were more than 4 Terrorgrade existences in the League of Defender, but the 4 heavenly kings were the most terrifying. Even the members of the 6 families feared the 4 guardians like snakes and scorpions when they heard their names. Belle finally knew why Buzz hadn't allowed her to ask. With this person around, even if the head of the Cape family came personally, he probably wouldn't be able to stop him from killing. You aren't his match. Run. Belle turned around to persuade Ming Xiu to escape, but she saw him standing there motionless as though he hadn't heard her. Belle wanted to walk over, but she was stopped by Tsukuyumi. He can't move now unless you want him to die, Tsukuyumi said indifferently. Belle was instantly stunned. She carefully observed Ming Xiu and realized that something was amiss with him. Don't tell me he's breaking through, Belle said with a complicated expression. Yes, Tsukuyumi answered with certainty. What should we do? Why does it have to be now? Belle was anxious and momentarily at a loss for what to do. Wait for him to finish his breakthrough, Tsukuyumi said. How can we wait until then? Belle didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If she could wait, she wouldn't be in such a hurry. They could wait, but the hermit wouldn't. Belle turned her head to look out the door. To her surprise, the hermit stood outside the door and didn't rush in. Hermit? I've never heard of him. What are you doing here? Belle nearly spewed out a mouthful of blood when she heard that. Provoking the hermit was equivalent to hanging oneself in front of death. Chapter 1150. The hermit frowned as he sized up Joan. The more he looked at him, the more familiar he found him, as though he had seen him somewhere before. However, if it was someone he had seen before, the hermit was very confident in his memory. It was impossible for him to not recall it. Furthermore, to be able to remain so composed in front of him wasn't something an ordinary person could do. After all, his entire body's rhythm resonated with the world. It was impossible for ordinary people to face him so easily. It was even more impossible for such a person to be easily forgotten. It wasn't that the hermit couldn't recognize Zhou Wan, but because the person impersonating Zhou Wan had slowly changed their temperament, looks, and figure over the past 5 years. As it was a gradual change, it was a subtle change. Furthermore, it was only a slight adjustment, allowing others to slowly accept the feeling that Zhou Wan was supposed to be like this. Now that the real Zhou Wan had appeared, coupled with the changes in his appearance and temperament over the past 5 years, it was difficult for others to connect him to Zhou Wan unless they were very familiar with him. The hermit had only seen Zhou Wan's photos and images in the past. To be able to find him familiar was already very sharp. How may I address you? The hermit couldn't tell Zhou Wan's origins, nor could he tell from his attire and the items on him. Therefore, he asked, My name isn't important. What's important is who I am, Zhou Wan said. Who are you? The hermit was rather patient as he asked again. I'm Ming Xiu's coach, Zhou Wan answered seriously. So what? The hermit stared at Zhou Wan as he pressed his middle finger on his thumb, secretly gathering strength between his fingers. So if you came from Ming Xiu, you can return now, Zhou Wan said. When Belle heard Zhou Wan's words, she felt that he must be crazy. Such a tone made it seem as though he didn't think anything of the hermit. It was as though as long as he was around, the hermit wouldn't harm Ming Xiu. The hermit's eyes turned sharp as he stared coldly at Zhou Wan and said, I can return, but that depends on if you really have what it takes. With that said, the hermit's fingers in his sleeve moved. After all, he was one of the 4 supervisors of the League of Defender. If he were to be scared off by a few words, how could he gain a foothold in the League of Defender? However, the hermit didn't plan on fighting Zhou head-on. In fact, that wasn't his specialty. As the hermit flicked his finger, an invisible particle flew towards Zhou. Hermits were experts in micro-abilities. In this era, many people were pursuing greater and stronger abilities. Huge monsters that looked like giant dragons attracted the attention of most people. They longed to possess such great power. Hermit, on the other hand, was different. Although he also sought to become stronger, at the same time, he sought to be small. What determines strength and weakness are often insignificant things. This had always been the hermit's belief. In fact, he had never been wrong. Relying on his micro-ability, the hermit had defeated many powerful opponents. Some of his opponents were no weaker than him, but even if their strengths were equal, his micro-ability still gave him a great advantage. It was so tiny that even a terrorgrade couldn't see it. Once it entered the body, it could erupt with terrifying power, catching people off guard. This crystalline crystal was already so small that it was in the ammeter range. Terrorgrade creatures might not be able to see its existence because it was too small. However, if such a small crystalline crystal really entered the body, it didn't even need to enter the body. As long as it approached Zhou, the explosive power would be enough to severely injure a terrorgrade creature. Although Zhou was only casually standing in front of the door, his life had already engraved the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, Brahma, and the god-fiend era. However, he didn't make them appear. The enhanced perception that Brahma gave Zhou was enough for him to see matter at the quark level. Although the hermit's crystalline crystal was tiny, it couldn't escape Zhou's perception. The crystalline crystal flew towards Zhou's mouth. When it tried to burrow into his mouth, it blasted his head apart. Seeing that the crystalline crystal was already by Zhou's lips, he didn't do anything. However, the hermit wasn't happy at all. Instead, he felt uneasy. In the next instant, Zhou opened his mouth and the clown face appeared on his face. With a strange smile, he swallowed the crystalline crystal. The uneasiness in the hermit's heart intensified. He desperately retreated, but it was still too late. The crystalline crystal that had been devoured by the clown mask strangely appeared behind him. As he retreated, he immediately slammed into the crystalline crystal, causing it to explode. Bam! One of the hermit's arms was blasted into a bloody mist. This was even with the hermit's extremely fast reaction and control of the crystalline crystal. Otherwise, his entire body would have been blasted apart. The hermit clutched his bloody, severed arm. Without uttering a single word, he turned around and attempted to flee. "If you wish to die, continue fleeing," Zhou said indifferently, having no intention of chasing after the hermit. However, the hermit didn't flee again. He stopped in his tracks and didn't dare take another step. "Whose order was it to kill Mingxiu?" Zhou asked. "No order. Mingxiu is an enemy of the League of Defender to begin with. He doesn't need any orders," the hermit said. "Does that mean you want to kill Mingxiu yourself?" Zhou asked again. "You can say that," the hermit said through gritted teeth. "Then stay here and guard Mingxiu. If Mingxiu lives, you live. If Mingxiu dies, you die too until Mingxiu allows you to leave." With that said, Zhou turned around and returned to the lounge. Belle watched Zhou walk back in a daze, as though she had seen a ghost. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back, feeling somewhat horrified. She even saw the hermit with the severed arm still standing there. He really hadn't left and was guarding the door. Who are you?" Belle looked at Zhou in surprise and finally couldn't help but ask. She hadn't seen Zhou take action at all. It was as though Zhou had only stood there and said a few words to the hermit before one of the hermit's arms suddenly exploded. Then, because of Zhou's words, one of the 4 heavenly kings of the League of Defender, the hermit, was actually standing at the door as a guard. This made her feel like she was living in a dream. Mingxiu's coach. Zhou didn't wish to say his name because there was another Zhou, one in the family. You. Belle stammered for a long time, but couldn't think of anything to say. Or perhaps it could be said that she had too many questions to ask. She suddenly recalled that Zhou Wen and Tsukumi's sword techniques were very ordinary. Back then, Belle had imagined that they were jealous of Mingxiu, but now, she suddenly realized that they were speaking the truth. Who the hell is he? Is there such a powerful existence among humans? I don't think I saw him use a guardian, nor did I see any characteristics of a dimensional creature on him. Could he be a pure-blooded human? Impossible. It's impossible for him to be a pure-blooded human. He must have hidden himself well and fused with a guardian or dimensional creature. I just can't tell. Belle looked at Zhou Wen and then at the hermit standing outside the door. Everything was so unreal. Chapter 1151. The hermit's injured arm hadn't been healed. In fact, the hermit was good at healing. He was the one who had healed Buzz's injury. However, the injuries on his body hadn't healed. Although the bleeding from his severed arm wasn't fast, the blood slowly dripped to the ground. It was obvious that it hadn't healed. The hermit felt as though there was a strange force constantly corroding his wound, preventing it from healing. He didn't dare escape because of the existence of this force. The hermit had a vague feeling that the force was like a time bomb that could explode at his wound at any moment. Although few people had seen the hermit's true appearance, a person with a severed arm standing at the lounge's door and dripping blood still attracted the attention of many students. The news quickly spread to the Cape family. When Buzz heard that, his heart skipped a beat. His expression changed drastically as he hurriedly rushed to school. He didn't dare go to the lounge directly. Instead, he checked the situation through the surveillance cameras and watched the previous surveillance footage. When he finished watching everything, the shock in his heart was unimaginable. Ordinary students didn't know who the hermit was or what kind of existence he was, but Buzz knew very well. Facing such a powerful and terrifying hermit, that young man didn't even move his hand. He just looked at the hermit and blew off one of the hermit's arms. Moreover, the hermit had no choice but to obediently stand guard at the door. What kind of terrifying strength was this? As the clown mask in the terror form couldn't be seen by ordinary humans, much less in a video, Buzz didn't see the clown mask appear. All he saw was the hermit's arm suddenly exploding for no reason. Who the hell is he? Mingxiu actually has such a teacher? It's no wonder he was able to rise rapidly in a few years. Who is this person? He definitely didn't contract a guardian. He doesn't look like he has fused a guardian and a dimensional creature. The more Buzz watched, the more alarmed he became. The back of Buzz's shirt was drenched in sweat. He was glad that Mingxiu was the one who hurt him and not the other way around. If he were to anger such an existence, he didn't know what the consequences would be. A person that even hermits didn't dare disobey was terrifying just thinking about it. Thankfully, Belle has formed a relationship with that person. He shouldn't make things difficult for our Cape family, right? Buzz didn't dare to delay. He immediately ordered his men to seal off the area around the lounge, preventing the students and teachers from going there. Of course, he didn't go himself and pretended that he didn't know anything. Belle stood in the lounge, feeling uneasy. She did not know whether to sit or stand. She was so nervous that her palms were sweating. In her eyes, Mingxiu was already a very powerful existence, and the hermit was even more terrifying. However, in front of this young man who seemed to be only in his 20s, he didn't seem to be as noble as she had imagined. It turns out that Professor Ming has such a powerful coach. No wonder he is so strong. But this person doesn't look much older than Professor Ming. Could it be that he only looks young, but is actually a 100-year-old monster? Yes, that must be it, Belle thought to herself. Zhou ignored Belle as he studied his primordial energy art. Previously, he had circulated the small perfection of wisdom, the God-fiend era, and the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder at the same time. The heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder had been playing a supporting role, so there weren't many changes. However, when Zhou used Great Brahma and the clown mask at the same time, an unexpected change happened. Zhou kept using Great Brahma to lock onto the tiny crystal. At the same time, he used the clown mask's spatial teleportation ability to teleport the tiny crystal behind the hermit. The powers of Great Brahma and the clown mask worked on the tiny crystal at the same time, producing a special effect. Even Zhou never expected that the two powers could be combined in such a manner. After the clown mask's spatial ability combined with Great Brahma's negative karma fire, it formed a spatial coordinate on the injured hermit's arm. Zhou could directly teleport his powers there without needing to go through the intermediate process. However, the only power that could directly teleport him, there was Great Brahma's negative karma fire. Other powers couldn't. Even so, it was already very sick. As long as he was struck by Zhou and his coordinates were marked, the subsequent negative karma fire attacks could be directly used on the wound until the other party died. Zhou was studying it to see if there was any possibility of the clown mask and Great Brahma fusing further. If they could cooperate further, they might be able to produce even more terrifying power. As Zhou was pondering, intense sword intent fluctuations suddenly erupted from Ming Xiu's body. Furthermore, his body began to undergo a strange change. His originally jade-like skin had now become as translucent as a crystal. A strange energy fluctuation gradually spread from Ming Xiu's body. Slowly, Ming Xiu's body became more and more transparent. When he vanished from their line of sight, the sword intent also vanished. Zhou looked at the spot where Ming Xiu had vanished in surprise. He could sense that Ming Xiu had reached the level of his terror transformation. But even after Ming Xiu's terror transformation, Zhou should still be able to see him with the Wheel of Destiny activated. Strangely, Zhou didn't see Ming Xiu. He seemed to have really vanished. However, Ming Xiu soon appeared in his line of sight again. At that moment, Ming Xiu had returned to his normal human form. He was even more normal than before. "Coach, this is Master's wife, right? She's really too powerful. She really enlightened me. I finally understood the profundities of time and completely absorbed the mythical liquid. If not for her, I don't know when I would have been able to completely absorb it. As expected of Coach, not only is he strong, but even the girlfriend he found is so strong," Ming Xiu said excitedly. Just as Zhou was about to explain, Tsukuyumi smiled and handed a sword to Ming Xiu. "Treat this as a greeting gift from Master's wife." "Thank you, Master's wife." Ming Xiu received the sword happily. He didn't really think that the sword was good. He was just happy. However, when he truly experienced the power of the sword in the future, he realized how precious it was. "Ming Xiu, you have to thank this classmate. She took a huge risk to inform you." Zhou hurriedly changed the topic, not wanting to harp on this matter. Ming Xiu looked at Belle in puzzlement, unsure what had happened. Zhou recounted what had happened. After Ming Xiu heard it, he expressed his gratitude to Belle. As for the hermit, Ming Xiu didn't do anything to him. Instead, after asking Zhou, he let him go. Zhou could roughly guess Ming Xiu's thoughts, so he didn't ask further. However, after seeing Ming Xiu, he missed those people even more. Looking at Tsukuyumi, Zhou gritted his teeth and decided to return to Luoyang with her. Chapter 1152. In Luoyang's and family, a guard reported to Tianzhua in the study. "Overseer, Missia, has been in the room for a day. Nanny Yu has been calling for a long time, but there's no response. Madam isn't home, so Nanny Yu is afraid that something will happen. She came to ask Overseer what to do." "Why isn't she eating again? Didn't I tell you that she likes sweets?" And Tianzhua said as he stood up. "Nanny Yu said that the best desserts in Luoyang have been bought. Even the best dessert chef has been hired, but Missia isn't eating. She didn't eat anything last night, and she hasn't come out today," the guard said. "She hasn't eaten anything since last night. How can that be?" As Tianzhua spoke, he walked out of the study and quickly walked towards Ye-er's courtyard. "Ye-er, why didn't you eat today? Is the food at home not to your liking? Shall I take you out to eat?" And Tianzhua knocked on the door and said gently, "I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat." The door creaked open, and a 7 or 8-year-old girl came out. She was as pretty as a doll, but her expression was a little too cold. It didn't look like an expression a little girl of her age should have. You have to eat some even if you don't want to. You're growing, so you have to eat more. If you're tired of Luoyang's desserts, I'll invite the famous dessert chefs in the south. They know how to make more desserts, and they are more delicious. And Tianzua said with a smile. Ye shook her head. Uncle, I'm really not hungry. I don't want to eat. How can you not be hungry? Wait in the living room. I'll personally cook something delicious for you. It's my specialty. I guarantee you will like it. And Tianzua said as he headed for the kitchen. Yeah. I sat on the sofa in the living room and held her chin in boredom. Although the family's life was very comfortable and everyone treated her well, she still liked the life she had when she went on adventures with Zhou. Suddenly, two figures appeared in the living room. They were Zhou and Tsukuyami. Zhou really couldn't shake Tsukuyami off, but seeing that she wasn't a dimensional creature that killed randomly, he hesitated before bringing her back to Luoyang. As he didn't know why the family had created a fake Zhou couldn't return through the main door. He decided he might as well teleport to the place where he and Ouyang Lan had eaten, hoping to see if he could bump into her. After teleporting, he didn't see Ouyang Lan. Instead, he saw her sitting on the sofa in a daze. Although was much bigger than before, he could still vaguely tell her previous appearance. Furthermore, she had a unique aura that others couldn't sense. Zhou had been with Yer for too long, so he was very familiar with that unique aura. When saw Zhou, she was first stunned before she was pleasantly surprised. She jumped up from the sofa and pounced into Zhou's arms. You said you would raise me? Yeah, said angrily before opening her mouth and biting Zhou's neck. Yeah. Yang lan ye mo yu hua hua guan I lan I yang yang one. I didn't want to either, but I was locked up by someone. I couldn't come back to find you, Zhou explained. Who is it? Yeah. Bit her lip and asked. We'll talk about that in the future. Zhou stroked Yer's head. You've grown taller and grown up. You've become more beautiful and adorable. Yer squinted her eyes like a kitten and leaned her hair against Zhou's hand. She gently rubbed it as though she enjoyed his stroking. Here you go. And Tianzua walked in with a bowl of steaming soup dumplings. He was wearing a white shirt, military pants, and an apron. His body was stained with a lot of flour, and even the tip of his nose had a pinch of flour. He looked completely different from his usual dignified appearance. However, when he saw Zhou when carrying the gentleness on his face immediately disappeared. It was as though he had instantly returned to the cold and arrogant overseer. However, he was wearing an apron and holding a bowl. His face was stained with flour, and his aura was somewhat weaker than usual. He didn't look as arrogant as he usually did. Seeing Zhou turn his head, and Tianzua immediately pulled off his apron and threw it at the guard beside him. He placed a bowl of soup dumplings on the table beside him and wiped his face. His expression instantly turned arrogant and cold. When did you come back? And Tianzua asked Zhou coldly. Just now, Zhou answered. And Tianzua said coldly, since you're back, stay at home for the next few days. Don't go out and cause trouble. With that said, and Tianzua glanced at Yer, who was in Zhou's arms with a smile on her face. He turned around and left. When he reached the door, he paused and said, Yer hasn't eaten much for the past 2 days. The kitchen has prepared a bowl of soup dumplings for her. Give it to her. Aren't you afraid of leading the child astray after leaving her at home for so long? With that said, and Tianzua walked out of the living room without looking back. After leaving the living room, and Tianzua instructed the guard beside him, send a message to Ensheng and tell him that that person is back. Do you need a teleportation order? The guard asked. There's no need. He knows what to do. And Tianzua took a few steps and seemed to recall something. He said to the guard beside him, go to the kitchen and get a cup of freshly squeezed orange juice for Yer. Heat it to 43 degrees Celsius. Yes, overseer. The guard accepted the order and left. Zhou sat on the sofa and watched eat the soup dumplings. After 5 years, Yer's language skills had improved a lot. Although she still didn't like to speak, she would occasionally say something. It wasn't as concise and stiff as before. Zhou could also tell that Er's personality had become more cheerful. Clearly, the family had taken good care of over the past 5 years. Perhaps it was because of Zhou Wen's return. Er's appetite was very good. In a short while, she finished the bowl of soup dumplings and licked her lips as though she hadn't had enough. She felt that the soup dumplings today were especially delicious. With Zhou Wen by her side, she didn't wish to speak. As long as she was by Zhou Wen's side, she would feel at ease. There was no need to say much. However, the way looked at Tsukuyami seemed to be filled with hostility. She's Tsukuyami, my friend. This is She's like my sister. Zhou Wen hurriedly introduced the two of them to prevent anything from happening. I'm not an ordinary friend. I'm Zhou Wen's wife. Tsukuyami deliberately emphasized her identity and said to with a smile. Divorce is very common now. Said expressionlessly. Chapter 1153. Their gazes met in the air, and it was as if sparks were flying between them. Young Master One, you're back. And Sheng came in at the right time, interrupting Tsukuyami and Er's eye contact. Sheng. Zhou Wen was overjoyed. On the one hand, he hadn't met Sheng in a long time, and on the other hand, he was grateful that Sheng had come in time. If they really fought, Zhou Wen was afraid that all of Luoyang would be reduced to ruins. He pulled Sheng to sit down and chat, but Zhou Wen didn't ask about the fake Zhou Wen. And Sheng didn't say anything either. They only talked about family matters. When Zhou Wen rested at night, there was a bookshelf in his room. Zhou Wen pulled out a book from a bookshelf and read it. It recorded a lot of information that Zhou Wen wanted to know. This was also what Sheng had secretly told him. After reading for a while, Zhou Wen roughly knew why a fake Zhou Wen had appeared in the family. After Zhou Wen was trapped, Wang Mingyuan secretly came to the family and told them that Zhou Wen would be missing for 5 years. He wanted them to create a fake Zhou Wen to replace Zhou Wen's identity during these 5 years. They couldn't let outsiders discover any flaws. However, there was no record of who was impersonating Zhou Wen. How did teacher know that I would escape in 5 years? Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. This was because his awakening and escape seemed to be a coincidence, but the timing was consistent with Wang Mingyuan's deduction. This made Zhou Wen suspect if his escape was a coincidence. However, Wang Mingyuan was now in a dimension, so it was useless to guess. The book also recorded something else that Zhou Wen wanted to know. Over the past 5 years, Ouyang Lan had still been investigating the former principal's expedition team. Ouyang Lan had made some discoveries some time ago, so she had already rushed to Netherworld City. She wanted to find Chu He, who was trapped in Netherworld City. She wanted to confirm some guesses. If those guesses were true, the expedition team's disappearance was very likely related to the trajectory Holy Temple of the 6 Holy Temples. Zhou Wen jumped in fright when he saw that Ouyang Lan had gone to Netherworld City. Ignoring the fact that dimensional creatures were everywhere outside, Netherworld City itself was a very terrifying place. It wasn't easy to come out alive after entering. I told you about the situation in Netherworld City. You should know how dangerous it is. Why didn't you stop Sis Lan? Zhou Wen sent Sheng a message. Soon, Sheng replied, You know Madam's temper. Once she decides on something, even the overseer can't change it. However, you don't have to worry too much. The overseer has sent many experts from the Sunset Army to accompany them. If they were to explore Netherworld City, they wouldn't let Madam enter personally. Coupled with the information you provided, there shouldn't be too much danger. I'm just afraid that the current Yellow Spring City is different from the past. Zhou Wen knew that Netherworld City wasn't simple. Only by enduring all the punishments could he see the true Netherworld City. What do you mean? Sheng asked in puzzlement. Zhou Wen told Sheng what City Lord Netherworld had said back then. Sheng heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that. Don't worry. None of them can withstand all the punishments. Nothing will happen. Sheng then told Zhou Wen about the current situation in the Federation. It was similar to what Zhou Wen knew previously. Earth could be roughly divided into 5 factions. The Federation President and some of his supporters, the League of Defender, the Holy Spirit Society, the overseas factions, and local wealthy families like the Yin family. There are also some powerful freelance hunters. Some of them were also very powerful, but compared to these large factions, their individual strength was still relatively weak. The six hero families didn't decline, nor were they completely controlled by the League of Defender. Their branches extended to the various factions. Even if one side collapsed, the six heroes wouldn't be completely destroyed. In fact, there were many members of the six families in the League of Defender. Although the Zhang family nominally opposed the Zhang family's entry into the League of Defender, there were still some Zhang family members who entered the League of Defender. No one could be sure if those people had really been expelled from the Zhang family. This is the heritage of a large family clan. As long as their survival model isn't destroyed, as long as the supply chain of resources is continuous, it doesn't matter even if a few geniuses and experts die. They have the ability to create more geniuses and experts. All they need is time, Asheng said. Zhou knew that Asheng was right. The reason why the six families were strong wasn't because of a particular genius, but because they already had a complete family survival model. They could obtain endless resources and nurture all kinds of geniuses. To topple such a family, it was useless to kill a few geniuses and experts. Unless the entire family was doomed, they would be able to prosper again sooner or later. Just like the Cape family, many geniuses had died because of Zhou, but they were still standing tall. According to Ensheng, the antelope and chick were following the fake Zhou. Only by doing so could they deceive those who were paying attention to Zhou. Therefore, they weren't in the Yin family now. Instead, they were guarding Chess Mountain with the fake Zhou. After chatting with Ensheng, Zhou took out his mysterious phone and entered the game again. Snow Valley's Goo mother hadn't respawned, so Zhou didn't choose to head to the Sapphire Sky. Instead, he chose to head to the endless sea of Stars Instance Dungeon. He wanted to see if he could kill the planet Devourer. He also grinded the Sea of Constellations, but he still failed to obtain the final 28 Lunar Mansion skills. After leaving the Sea of Constellations, Zhou summoned Banana Fairy and Demonic Neonate. Not long after, he sensed spatial fluctuations. The gigantic planet Devourer appeared above their heads. The jellyfish-like planet Devourer emitted intense starlight, but most people couldn't see this starlight. In its body, there was a vortex that resembled a black hole. Everything that approached it was sucked into the black hole. The moment the planet Devourer descended, the terrifying suction force descended as well. Banana Fairy directly used the Grand Yin Wind on the planet Devourer. With the augmentation of the Three Realms Wheel of Destiny, this fan was extremely terrifying. However, when the Grand Yin Wind blew in front of the planet Devourer, it was sucked in by the black hole in its body. Banana Fairy fanned the solar wind again, but the outcome was the same. They were all sucked in by the black hole. Banana Fairy frowned slightly as the fan formed from the banana leaf in her hand revealed a state of half yin and half yang. At the instant she fanned it at the planet Devourer, the yin and yang winds fused into one, transforming into an infinite wind that swept towards the approaching planet Devourer. Chapter 1154. The infinite wind blew endlessly at the planet Devourer, but it failed to send it flying. Its body was like a black hole. No matter what kind of force rushed at it, it would be devoured by the black hole. This had nothing to do with the strength. This was the characteristic of the planet Devourer. Zhou felt a headache. A dimensional creature whose body was a black hole couldn't be injured by ordinary forces. No matter how strong the attack was, it was futile. It's no wonder it can devour planets. Zhou could only teleport with Banana Fairy to dodge the planet Devourer's suction as he thought about how to kill it. The planet Devourer was also good at spatial powers. It constantly teleported with Zhou when in a bid to devour him. Thankfully, Zhou, who was wearing the clown mask, could teleport infinitely. The planet Devourer couldn't catch up to him. With a thought, Zhou teleported to a small planet. After the planet Devourer teleported over, it devoured the small planet before Zhou teleported to another small planet. Zhou thought that the planet devourer was a dimensional creature after all. It couldn't possibly devour infinite matter, right? If he could use these small planets to feed it, he might have a chance to finish it off. However, Zhou soon realized that his thoughts were ridiculously wrong. After the planet devourer devoured the small planet, not only did it not show any signs of being full, but the range and suction force of the black hole increased. Only then did Zhou realize that he had thought the opposite. The more matter the planet devoured, the stronger it became. It didn't seem to be filled. Since I can't feed it, I'll starve it to death. With a thought, Zhou teleported to a place with fewer small planets. Teleportation expended a large amount of essence energy. With the massive size of the planet devourer, the energy expended by teleportation was even more terrifying. After several consecutive teleportations, Zhou could clearly sense that the planet devourer's black hole seemed to have weakened significantly. The suction range and strength were decreasing. It's indeed effective. Zhou was delighted as he continued wandering the endless sea of stars with the planet devourer. The planet devourer had expended a lot of energy. It suddenly stopped chasing Zhou and charged toward a nearby small planet. Clearly, it wanted to devour the small planet to replenish its energy. Zhou naturally couldn't let it have its way. He teleported to the tiny planet as the clown mask on his face emitted a strange aura. The surrounding space distorted. Zhou pressed his palm on the tiny planet, hoping to teleport it away. Unfortunately, he soon discovered that although the clown mask's spatial energy was powerful, it was still too difficult for it to teleport a small star far away. Before Zhou could successfully teleport the tiny planet, the planet devourer had already devoured it. All Zhou could do was teleport away. It doesn't seem realistic to forcefully teleport, but what if it's the teleportation ability of the sky-stealing, sun-shifting art? Zhou didn't give up on his plan and thought of a way to complete it. Zhou circulated the sky-stealing, sun-shifting art and engraved it on the Wheel of Destiny. It was a point, a singularity in the universe. The singularity was the beginning of the universe and also the eternity of the universe. It looked like a single point, but there seemed to be a small universe within it. There were countless stars orbiting within it. Back when Zhou condensed the singularity life soul, he had already begun advancing to the mythical stage. He didn't have much time to study the abilities of this life soul. Later, he was trapped for 5 years, but his thoughts had passed for more than 100 years. During this long period of time, Zhou had a deep understanding of the sky-stealing, sun-shifting art and the singularity. However, research was ultimately research. As he was trapped, he could only think about it and couldn't verify it. Therefore, Zhou didn't know if he was right or not. Now that he was in the endless sea of stars, he could test Zhou's ideas. With the power of the singularity universe, Zhou could freely shuttle between the small planets in the endless sea of stars. However, he could only lock onto the small planets and couldn't teleport as freely as the clown mask. However, the teleportation distance was much further than the clown mask. Zhou landed on a small planet and attempted to use the power of the singularity universe to teleport the small planet to another location. However, he didn't teleport. Although the star corresponding to the small planet in the singularity universe kept flickering, there was no movement. The planet devourer had already caught up. Zhou could only give up on the idea of teleporting this small planet and teleport to another small planet. However, Zhou didn't give up. He continued trying again and again. He felt that he should succeed. Since this essence energy art is called sky-stealing, sun-shifting art, it doesn't make sense that I can't even exchange a small planet. Sun-shifting. Zhou suddenly thought of something as his eyes lit up. He tried again, but this time, he didn't just want to teleport the small planet over. Instead, he wanted to swap it with another small planet. In the singularity universe, 2 stars lit up. As Zhou's hands pressed down on the small planet, they produced spatial fluctuations. The entire small planet seemed to be affected by the spatial fluctuations. Boom! The singularity universe exploded with powerful spatial energy fluctuations. It was like the Big Bang of the universe. Instantly, it produced a strange pocket universe phantom that fused with Zhou Wen's body. It made Zhou Wen feel like the universe was him, and he was the universe. In the next second, something unbelievable happened. The spatial energy suddenly erupted. Then, the metal planet in Zhou Wen's hand instantly turned into a rocky planet. It was the one Zhou Wen had chosen to exchange with. Damn, it's actually possible. Then, can I exchange Earth with other planets in the real world? Can I let Earth leave the Milky Way? Zhou Wen imagined himself traveling through the universe with Earth. However, on careful thought, it probably wasn't that easy. After the singularity universe advanced to the Terragrade, it could only move such a mini planet. The size of a small planet was about the same as a mountain. It was far inferior to Earth. It probably wasn't that easy to exchange for a real planet. Furthermore, there were so many terrifying creatures and dimensional zones on Earth. It was impossible for him to not expend energy to teleport with so many terrifying things. Zhou Wen looked at the blood-colored avatar's information and realized that the terror form condensed by the sky-stealing, sun-shifting art was called Singularity Universe. It was also an S-grade terraform. Up to now, Zhou Wen had condensed 4 S-grade terraforms: Brahma, God-Fiend Era, Heaven-Opening Scripture of the Highest Elder, and Singularity Universe. However, his level was still at the mythical stage, and his stats hadn't exceeded 81. Chapter 1155. The Singularity Universe's terror transformation allowed Zhou Wen to obtain some means of sky swapping, but this method had to be exchanged. He couldn't teleport the tiny planet away out of thin air. After sending one away and exchanging for another, after being devoured by the planet devourer, it would still replenish its mass, allowing the planet devourer to be replenished. This was clearly far from what Zhou Wen wanted. Is there no other way? Zhou Wen constantly comprehended the power the Singularity Universe gave him. Zhou Wen realized that sky swapping didn't necessarily require exchanging planets. He could completely exchange a planet with a paper ball. This was also possible. However, with the Singularity Universe's present strength, it was impossible to achieve that level. This was because the positioning was too vague. The smallest unit that the Singularity Universe could locate was a planet. Without being able to locate a long-distance paper ball, there was naturally no way to exchange. I'm already at the Terragrade. Shouldn't I raise the resolution? Even if I can't see the paper ball, I can still locate a mountain or river. Zhou Wen felt somewhat depressed. However, on second thought, Zhou Wen's heart stirred again. The Singularity Universe alone definitely couldn't achieve such a detailed level. After all, the sky-stealing sun-swapping art was a rather macroscopic essence energy art. However, the power of the God-Fiend Era was different. It was also a spatial power, but the God-Fiend Era was a more precise spatial power. If I can use the power of the Clown Mask and the Singularity Universe at the same time like Brahma and the Clown Mask, what kind of effect will it produce? Will I be able to do some more precise positioning and exchange? With a thought, Zhou Wen circulated the 2 terror transformation powers at the same time. Since he wasn't afraid of death in-game, it didn't matter if he tried. Bam! When Zhou Wen attempted to fuse the 2 terror powers, the blood-colored avatar's body split apart and vanished. The game screen went black and a notification popped up. Suicide successful. A dark cloud hung over Zhou Wen's head as he thought to himself, how can this be considered suicide? I'm clearly sacrificing myself for an experiment. Although his attempt didn't succeed, Zhou Wen knew very well that this was because he hadn't grasped the rhythm of the fusion of the 2 terror powers. It didn't mean that they couldn't fuse. Therefore, Zhou Wen began making repeated attempts. But the result was a successful suicide. Every death had a certain harvest. Zhou Wen knew that he wasn't far from success. If all 9 Essence Energy Arts complete their terror transformation and use 9 terror transformation powers at the same time, what kind of scene would that be? Zhou Wen had a vague sense of anticipation. After training hard for most of the night, Zhou finally succeeded in fusing the two terror powers into one for the first time. Then, he attempted to teleport a tiny planet out. However, when he pressed his palm on the small planet, a black hole appeared and swallowed the small planet. The black hole also began devouring everything around it, nearly sucking the blood-colored avatar in. Thankfully, Zhou reacted quickly and teleported out. This was completely different from what Zhou had expected. Clearly, the spatial powers after the fusion didn't develop in the direction he wanted. Instead, they created a black hole. Using a black hole against a black hole, I wonder if it can deal with the planet devourer? As Zhou was thinking, he realized that the planet devourer had already descended on the small black hole he had created. The planet devourer charged at the small black hole. When the two collided, not only did they not clash, but they fused together, making the planet devourer even stronger. That black hole has betrayed me. Zhou nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. He knew that his control over the fusion-type terror powers wasn't good. Furthermore, using a black hole to fight a black hole wasn't right. With no other choice, Zhou could only continue experimenting. Thankfully, with his successful experience, everything went much smoother. Zhou quickly grasped the method to create a black hole. However, the black holes he could create were only small black holes. Furthermore, he needed enough external material to support them. Although this move was useless against the planet devourer, it was still very effective against other terror creatures. Zhou continued studying. His main goal was to truly switch sides and teleport the planet away without giving the planet devourer a chance to replenish itself. Zhou failed to complete his goal until morning, but he had some ideas. And Shang sent a message early in the morning, telling Zhou when to stay in the family for the time being and not go anywhere. He could exchange identities with the fake Zhou tonight. Who is that Zhou? Zhou replied, "Guess," and Shang replied, "I can't guess." Zhou thought to himself, "Guess my ass. How would I know who it is?" However, on second thought, it wasn't easy to pretend to be him without revealing any flaws. His iconic companion beasts were almost unique, and they had to be strong enough. Even with the chick and antelope as cover, it wasn't easy to find such a person. "It can't be you, right?" Zhou said after some thought. "No, if it's me, it'll be too obvious. He'll definitely be seen through." And Shang denied Zhou's guess. Then who is it? Zhou really couldn't guess. There were only a few experts in Luoyang. It was impossible for Lung Zongjing and in Tianzhua to impersonate him. Zhou really couldn't guess who else had such an ability. You'll know when the time comes. And Shang clearly liked this feeling very much and didn't tell Zhou directly. Since Shang didn't say anything, Zhou had no choice but to stop asking. After chatting with Shang for a while, Shang went to busy himself. Ye pushed open the door and walked in. She was holding a plate in her hand. There was breakfast on the plate, and it looked like it was double servings. Ye placed the plate on the table and sat down opposite Zhou. She blinked and said, "Let's have breakfast together." Zhou hadn't slept to begin with. He sat down and prepared to have breakfast with Ye, but to his surprise, before he could sit down, Tsukumi walked in and sat down in Zhou's seat. She picked up Zhou's breakfast and took a bite. She looked at Ye, and said with a smile, "Not bad. It's delicious. Thank you. There's no need to thank me. Anyway, I feed the dogs at home every day. I'm used to it." Ye pushed the remaining portion of the plate in front of Tsukumi. "Eat more if you like it." Zhou didn't know why Tsukumi liked to target Ye so much, but seeing that they were about to fight again, he hurriedly pulled Ye away. He coughed lightly and said to Tsukumi, "Don't you want to see how humans study? Why don't I take you to where I used to go to school? Isn't it just a place like Royal College?" "It's boring," Tsukumi said. "It's different. The place where I went to school is quite interesting, but I can only go there later." Zhou wanted to meet his old classmates, but on careful thought, they had long graduated. Unless they stayed in school to continue their studies or become tutors, it was impossible for him to meet them again. I wonder how Gu Dian is now? Zhou thought of the man who resembled a devil. He had already learned about Li Xian and company from Shang. Only Gu Jian had disappeared after graduation, and he had no idea where he had gone. Chapter 1156. At night, and Sheng came over to call Zhou Wan and Yer to the front hall for dinner. Tsukuyami kept following Zhou Wan, so Zhou Wan had no choice but to bring her along. Before the group reached the front hall, they saw a golden stream of light fly out of the hall and instantly arrive in front of Zhou Wan. Zhou Wan extended his arm and saw a strange golden-feathered bird land on his arm. It was a chick. However, the chick's current size was like an eagle. It puzzled Zhou Wan as he thought to himself, how strange. Isn't it a descendant of a phoenix? Why does it look more and more like an eagle? However, Zhou Wan was still delighted to be able to reunite with the chick. He reached out to stroke the chick's feathers and vaguely felt a scorching heat flowing under the feathers. The chick intimately rubbed its head against Zhou Wan's body, not feeling any sense of unfamiliarity from 5 years of separation. Up to now, Zhou Wan still didn't understand why the phoenix had chosen him to deal with the chick. After entering the front hall, Zhou Wan saw the antelope lazily sprawled on the sofa without approaching the dining table. At the dining table, Tianzua was sitting in the seat of honor, and Jing was sitting to his right. After so many years, Jing's appearance was very different from before. She was tall and not shorter than Zhou Wan. Her face no longer had baby fat, making her look more heroic. Furthermore, she looked a lot calmer. Even though she was sitting there, her back was straight. One could see the bearing of a soldier from her. And Tianzua and Jing looked at Zhou Wan without a word. Young Master One, sit here. And Sheng got Zhou Wan to sit on Tianzua's left while Yer sat beside him. And Sheng originally wanted to arrange for Tsukuyami to sit beside Jing, but Tsukuyami sat beside Yer. And Sheng had no choice but to walk to Jing's side and sit down. Then he said to Zhou Wan, Young Master Wan, why don't you introduce this beautiful lady to us? Her name is Tsukuyami. She's a friend I met overseas. Zhou Wan found it odd. This was because Sheng had previously said that he should be able to see the person pretending to be him at night, but there was only Tianzua and Jing here. It's definitely impossible for Tianzua. Could it be that the person pretending to be me is Jing? Zhou Wan couldn't help but glance at Jing. Jing happened to be looking at him as well. When their eyes met, the two of them subconsciously looked away, feeling a little uncomfortable. Miss you is from overseas? Which island do you live on? And Tianzua asked Tsukuyami. Bride Island. Tsukuyami answered truthfully. Bride Island? And Tianzua frowned slightly as he sized up Tsukuyami. Obviously, he knew what kind of place Bride Island was and knew that it was impossible for humans to live there. Zhou Wan was afraid that Tianzua would continue asking, so he explained, Bride Island isn't as terrifying as the legends say. I've been to Bride Island before and saw the ghost parade. Zhou Wan's topic immediately piqued Sheng's interest. I heard that there was a ghost parade disaster overseas. There should be a calamity creature appearing, but for some reason, there was suddenly no news of it. Young Master One, since you've been there, do you know what happened? And Jing and Tianzua also looked at Zhou Wan. Clearly, they wanted to know the answer. Zhou Wan naturally knew what was going on, but he couldn't tell them in front of Tsukuyami that he, Zhou Wan, was the one who had abducted a calamity creature that had just been born. That was why the dimensional creatures that accompanied it were temporarily obedient, right? Actually, it's all misinformation. Calamity creatures aren't as terrifying as the outside world describes them to be. They're still very kind, reasonable, and amiable. I reasoned with them, and they probably felt that what I said made sense, so they didn't continue the ghost parade. With Tsukuyami beside him, he could only speak against his will. Otherwise, if he angered Tsukuyami, Luoyang would probably be doomed. And Tianzua, and Jing, and Sheng looked at him. Their gazes explained everything. They felt that Zhou Wan was spouting nonsense. Reason with calamity creatures? Furthermore, they were kind and amiable. It would be a miracle if they believed him. And Jing said indifferently, they are so kind and nice. Why didn't you invite them back as guests? Why didn't I invite them? Isn't it just beside us? Zhou Wan thought to himself, but he said, it's too far away. It's not easy to travel. I'll invite them over next time if there's a chance. And Jing curled her lips and didn't say anything else. Clearly, she felt that Zhou was spouting nonsense, and Sheng hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Overseer, the food is ready. Why don't we serve first? And Tianzua nodded slightly, as Sheng hurriedly ordered someone to serve the food. The food was very sumptuous, but it wasn't extravagant. The most expensive food was probably the dessert that Ye ate. The rest were ordinary home-cooked dishes, but they were rather exquisite. The atmosphere was especially stiff when the few of them ate together. And Tianzua took a few bites and put down his bowl and chopsticks before asking Tsukuyumi, "Miss Tsukuyumi, you live on Bright Island. Have you seen the ghost parade with your own eyes?" "Of course I've seen it," Tsukuyumi answered. "I wonder which 100 ghosts the ghost parade are. Let us broaden our horizons," and Tianzua said. "It's said to be 100 ghosts, but there are actually more than 100. If it's the terror grade, there are more than 100. For example, Daitengu, Yuki Anna, Hashiheim, and company are all at the terror grade," Tsukuyumi answered. "You're really lucky to be able to escape alive with so many terror creatures." And Jing clearly didn't believe Tsukuyumi's words. Didn't Zhou already say that the dimensional creatures, they're very kind and amiable? We get along very well and are like friends. There's no need to escape, right? Tsukuyumi's last sentence was directed at Zhou. Yes, they're especially amiable. They're really kind. They're all friends. What else could Zhou say? He could only go along with Tsukuyumi. Then you really should invite them back next time. Let us meet those amiable friends, and Jing said casually. There's no need to wait for the next time. I can introduce you now, Tsukuyumi said. And Jing felt that there was no point in continuing. Just as she was about to end the topic, the lights in the hall suddenly went out. It wasn't just the living room. The entire family had fallen into darkness. All the lights were extinguished. And Jing and Sheng's expressions changed. They wanted to get up, but Tianzua calmly said, "Sit down." And Jing and Sheng had no choice but to sit down again. However, just as they sat down, a cold wind blew open the living room's door. Snowflakes blew in with the cold wind. At the same time, a woman in white floated in. Yukiana, and Sheng and Jing stared at Yukiana. They had already guessed her identity, but they still found it unbelievable. Yukiana walked to Tsukuyumi's side and bowed slightly at them. "Greetings, Lord and Fuma." Chapter 11:57. And Jing and the others watched with their mouths agape. The entire family was silent. With the family's defenses, the army and hidden forces should have long rushed into the hall after such a huge commotion. But there was no movement at all. The dark yard was deathly silent. The night was terrifyingly dark, as though a dark behemoth was entrenched in a manor. The sound of wings flapping sounded. Almost at the same time, the Daitengu landed in front of the living room. It retracted its wings and bowed at Tsukuyumi and Zhou. "Greetings, Lord and Fuma." And Jing and the others had naturally heard of the Daitengu's name. Legend had it that it was transformed from an emperor after his death. It had a very high status in a particular country's pantheon. Is this really the legendary Daitengu? And Jing's body trembled as she looked at the Daitengu that resembled a winged devil. It seemed very similar to the legends. Even if it wasn't the legendary Daitengu, just its ability to appear out of thin air was an extremely powerful existence. It was undoubtedly at the terror grade. Boom! Boom! Before Jing could figure out if it was the real Daitengu, she suddenly heard a strange sound. It was as though a behemoth had stepped into a manor. Soon, a strange temple appeared in front of the living room. The strange temple seemed to have a life of its own. The open temple door was pitch black like the mouth of a terrifying monster. "Greetings, Lord and Fuma." The temple landed in front of the hall with a rumble as a ghastly voice sounded. A faint zither sound came from the side door. Amaterasu carried his pipa and walked in. After entering the hall, he bowed at Tsukuyumi and Zhou. "Greetings, Lord and Fuma." Moments later, 4 terrifying dimensional creatures appeared. Furthermore, there were many ghostly shadows in the distance, as though endless ghosts were heading over. and Sheng and Jing's strength was already extraordinary. They could sense that the strength of those creatures was extremely terrifying. They were definitely not ordinary mythical creatures. And Tianzua didn't look at Yukiana and company. All he did was stare coldly at Tsukuyumi. He had already guessed Tsukuyumi's identity the moment Snow White appeared. Without a doubt, Tsukuyumi wasn't a real human, but a calamity creature that had appeared overseas. Only she could control so many terrifying creatures. And Sheng naturally thought of it as well. They looked at Tsukuyumi in horror. No one expected the woman who had returned with Zhou Wen to be a calamity creature that had appeared overseas. Don't tell me she wants to trigger a ghost parade in the family? And Jing felt extremely uneasy. If it was really as Tsukuyumi had said, with more than 100 terror creatures gathered here, the entire Luoyang city would probably suffer if there was a riot. Tsukuyumi, that's enough. We are eating. They can go back, Zhou Wen said with a frown. When Tsukuyumi heard Zhou Wen's words, she was surprisingly gentle. She had no intention of retorting Zhou Wen. She obediently raised her hand and waved it. Snow Anna, De Tengu, and the other terror creatures instantly retreated and hid into the darkness. As for the family, it returned to normal. The lights were switched on again. The guards outside didn't seem to know what had happened. They were still patrolling, as if they didn't know what had just happened. And Tianzua's brows relaxed when he saw that everyone in the residence was fine. Sit down and eat. Zhou Wen secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Tsukuyumi put away the dimensional creatures. If they really fought, the family in Luoyang would suffer heavy losses, even if he could use the immortal culling sword to kill Tsukuyumi. Tsukuyumi seemed to have changed into a different person today. She was especially gentle and obedient as she picked up the bowl and chewed slowly. However, her current appearance was completely different from before in the eyes of Jing and company. A calamity creature treated Zhou Wen's words like an imperial edict. This was just too shocking. Only everyone knew what the meal tasted like. I'm full. I want to go back and rest. Tsukuyumi looked at Zhou Wen as though she was seeking his opinion. Go back first. After Zhou Wen said that, Tsukuyumi stood up and left. The moment Tsukuyumi left, the atmosphere immediately eased up, and Sheng whispered, Young Master One, is she really the one who appeared overseas? Zhou Wen nodded and said helplessly, Yes. Young Master One, not bad. A calamity-grade creature is actually so obedient to you. Could it be that you have already advanced to the calamity stage? And Sheng asked. Although Sheng and Tianzua knew that Zhou Wen was human sovereign, they could also tell that Zhou Wen had relied on the power of that sword to defeat Dition the last time, not because he had advanced to the calamity grade. And Jing and Tianzua also looked at Zhou Wen. They clearly wanted to know what level Zhou Wen had reached to make a calamity grade creature obey him. Tsukuyumi's performance just now didn't seem to go against Zhou Wen's wishes at all. Zhou Wen shook his head and said with a bitter smile, I'm still at the mythical stage. I'm still very far from the calamity grade. As for Tsukuyumi, I can't explain it immediately. In short, it's a long story. And Sheng naturally didn't believe him, as he said with a smile, to make a calamity-grade creature obey you is a long story. I won't give it a try. Zhou Wen couldn't explain it clearly. No one would believe that a calamity creature insisted on marrying him. After the meal, Zhou Wen returned with Ya-er. The chick and antelope followed as well, seemingly without much reluctance. Overseer, it looks like we don't have to worry about young Master Wen's safety. Even a calamity-grade creature is so obedient to him. Even if young Master Wen doesn't really advance to the calamity grade, he's definitely much stronger than before. It probably won't be that easy for the League of Defender to touch him, and Shang said. Have we been worried about his safety? And Tianzua said indifferently. Furthermore, just as he said, his strength hasn't reached the calamity grade. He hasn't even reached the terror grade. There must be another reason why Tsukuyumi is following him. It might not be a good thing. Tsukuyumi doesn't seem to have any ill intentions towards young Master One, and Shang said. Not having any ill intentions doesn't mean anything. You still have to continue with the previous arrangements. Don't have any wishful thinking, and Tianzua said, and Sheng stood up and bowed as he said seriously, Overseer, don't worry. I'll do my best to do everything. And Jing sat by the side and ate silently without saying a word. She originally thought that she had grown a lot in the past 5 years, but now she suddenly realized that her growth was nothing in front of Zhou. Zhou returned to his room and realized that Tsukuyumi was sitting there waiting for him. Upon seeing Zhou return, Tsukuyumi blinked and asked, How did I do? What do you mean? Zhou asked in puzzlement. Of course, it's your performance at the banquet. Don't you humans say that a good wife has to give her husband face in front of outsiders? Does what I did count as giving you face? Does that count as a good wife? Tsukuyumi asked Zhou. Chapter 1158. Zhou was instantly rendered speechless. He looked at Tsukuyumi and didn't know what to say. What kind of charm does the Heavenly Happiness card have to make a calamity-grade creature do such a thing? Zhou was alarmed and puzzled. Back when Emperor Shang gave him the Heavenly Happiness card, he didn't think there was a problem, but now he felt that the problem was huge. Emperor Shang should have been defeated back then. Does a card he gave really have that much power? No matter how Zhou thought about it, he felt that something was amiss. Is that wrong? I saw that it was written on the internet. Seeing that Zhou wasn't saying a word, Tsukuyumi thought that she had done something wrong. She opened the web page and saw the words 36 Stratagems of Love. That's right. That's what's written on it. Could it be that there's a problem with the way I use it? Tsukuyumi studied it carefully again. Seeing that she had no intention of leaving, Zhou had no choice but to give her his room and find another place to stay. The chick and antelope returned to his side, making Zhou feel indescribably at ease. He summoned Banana Fairy, Demonic Neonate, Truth Listener, and the other companion beasts, and let them move freely in the house. Zhou lay in bed and continued gaming. At the same time, he studied the combination of the clown mask and the singularity universe. Amidst the constant failures, Zhou became more and more adept at using the two powers together. Finally, Zhou thought of a way to exchange the small planet without exchanging it back. When he arrived in front of a small planet again, Zhou picked up a stone and pinched it in his hand before throwing it into the distance. After the stone flew far away, Zhou pressed his palm on the small planet. In the next second, something magical happened. The small planet under Zhou's hand vanished, and the stone he had thrown appeared in his hand. It's done. Zhou was overjoyed as he tried a few more times. The success rate was rather high, and it was the same the other way around. However, he had to leave coordinates on one of the items before he could make a long-distance exchange. The further the exchange, the greater the expenditure. To use this technique, he had to use the power of the clown mask and the singularity universe at the same time. Zhou constantly practiced to allow himself to switch places faster. Only by doing so could he finish off the Planet Devourer. After practicing countless times, Zhou found the Planet Devourer again when he felt that it was about right. He constantly used teleportation to drain the Planet Devourer's strength. When the suction force of the Planet Devourer's black hole weakened to a certain extent, it indeed wanted to devour the nearby planets. Zhou immediately teleported to the tiny planet and teleported a stone out. Just as the Planet Devourer was about to devour the planet suddenly vanished. Zhou, who was on the planet, vanished as well, leaving behind a fist-sized rock. The planet of Devour the Stone, the replenishment that the Devourer's body. God, of a god dragon. Yang Hua, when Zhang dragon with him. Hua Zhou of. He of one, and God he what? He, one at Tian God T him. Of one of God without of he God star T. How, he, of the of Chun, the Chun, he went of the Hua of. Without any replenishment, the black hole in the Planet Devourer's body clearly became weaker and weaker. The suction force became weaker and weaker, and even its body gradually shrank. Zhou Wen's expenditure was even greater than the planet devourers. However, with Slaughterer replenishing a large amount of essence energy, and with the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder's essence energy recovery augmentation, it was almost equivalent to infinite essence energy. The planet devourer's body became smaller and smaller. When it was about the size of small planet, its body suddenly collapsed and was destroyed. Ding! A companion egg fell out of the planet devourer's collapse. Killed terror creature, planet devourer. Discover companion egg. Zhou Wen was delighted. This was the first terror-grade companion egg he had dropped in the truest sense of the word. He reached out and grabbed the companion egg. He saw that the black companion egg was crystalline. There was a strange vortex pattern inside that seemed to constantly swirl. Planet devourer, terror grade life providence, black whole life soul, astral core wheel of destiny, devourer terror transformation, devourer strength, 89 speed, 92 constitution, 94 essence energy, 93 talent skill, space-time transference, energy release companion form. Glove. After Zhou Wen saw its stats, he couldn't help but be slightly taken aback. He never expected this item's companion form to be a glove. However, on careful thought, it did look like a glove, but it was too big. He directly chose to hatch it, and a large amount of essence energy was sucked away by the companion egg. It was only because Zhou Wen had the dual augmentation of Slaughterer and the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder that ordinary mythical creatures couldn't provide such a huge amount of essence energy expenditure. With the injection of essence energy, the planet devourer gradually hatched. It was identical to the previous planet devourer, and its size was extremely huge. When the planet devourer was completely hatched, it transformed into a black beam of light that injected into Zhou Wen's body. When Zhou Wen summoned it again, the planet devourer had already transformed into a glove. It was a black crystalline glove. At the palm, there was a mysterious black vortex that emitted a powerful suction force. Zhou Wen gave it a try and realized that he could control the black hole suction force on his palm. He attempted to use the planet devourer glove on a nearby planet. The mountain-sized planet was forcefully pulled over by the black hole on the glove. The closer the planet was to the glove's black hole, the smaller it became. Finally, it was sucked into the glove's black hole. Zhou Wen immediately felt that the glove's black hole's power had become much stronger due to the absorption of the planet. The planet devourer's strength is strong enough, but the black hole's suction force is too slow. Before the object is sucked in, I can still dodge it as long as I'm fast enough. However, if I directly slap the enemy with the glove, I can suck them into the black hole. It'll be impossible for them to escape. Zhou Wen secretly pondered over how to use the planet devourer. However, there was one thing that worried Zhou Wen. The planet devourer's black hole was somewhat similar to Torch Dragon's bright Torch Vision World. He didn't know if the items that dropped could be taken out if dimensional creatures were sucked in. He brought the planet devourer to give it a try. Indeed, as he had guessed, nothing was left behind after being sucked into the black hole. Chapter 1159. The next morning, Sheng did some cosmetic work on Zhou Wen before letting him leave the family. Zhou Wen looked at the makeup Sheng had done for him and realized that his facial lines had softened. His hairstyle had also changed a little, but the other changes weren't too drastic. He took Ye and Yueyu to Sunset College. This was considered Zhou Wen's alma mater, but unfortunately, he hadn't graduated from here. Luoyang was rather well preserved because it was surrounded by dimensional zones. Furthermore, several levels below Luoyang City were dimensional zones. All of Luoyang was equivalent to a huge, complicated dimensional zone. It was very difficult for dimensional creatures from the outside world to rush in. Instead, it became abnormally safe. As for the various dimensional zones in Luoyang, there were many dimensional creatures that broke out of the restrictions. However, as they were already familiar with these dimensional creatures, coupled with the constant battles over the past 5 years, they ultimately managed to preserve humanity's foundation in Luoyang. Zhou had also seen a lot of information about Luoyang on the internet. It could be said that Luoyang was a very unique existence in the entire Federation. Two of the four gods of war of the new era were in Luoya. One was in Tianzhua, and the other was Sunset College's chancellor, Lung Zongjing. It was said that in the past 5 years, Luoyang had experienced countless battles of various sizes. The biggest reason why humans could occupy this place was because of these two guarding Luoyang. When he arrived in front of the familiar school gate again, Zhou had mixed emotions. Although it had only been 5 years, the school had changed drastically. Many of the buildings were new, and even the gate was different from before. It was likely newly built. Although the entire school looked brand new and more imposing than before, on careful thought, one could tell that the reason why the school had been renovated on a large scale wasn't because of the pursuit of aesthetics, but because it had to be rebuilt. From this, one could tell how many terrifying battles the school had experienced to make the entire school look brand new. Inside the school's gate stood the statue of human emperor's heaven slashing sword. It was similar to the one Zhou had seen before, but it looked even more majestic. Upon seeing the human emperor statue, Zhou couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. Humans treated him as a savior and worshipped him like a god, but he didn't think too much about it back then. He had no intention of saving humanity. He was only forced to do so. He took out the pass Sheng had given him and successfully brought Yuyu Inya into the school. However, it could be seen that the guards of the academy recognized him and were very respectful. Zhou roughly knew that this respect was for Jing's impersonation of Zhou, not for him. From the looks of it, Jing must have done a lot while impersonating me. Zhou walked into the school and saw a scene that was very different from the Royal College. Although this place placed great importance on the cultivation of companion beasts, primordial energy arts, and primordial energy skills, one could also see the shadows of technology. There were also many things that combined companion beasts and technology. Tsukuyumi was very curious when she saw the technological items. You're right. The place you go to school is indeed a little different from the college you went to previously, Tsukuyumi said as she looked at the students practicing shooting on the field. Yes, although Zhou was unwilling to admit it. He had to admit that most of it was thanks to Tianzhua. Tianzhua had always placed great importance on scientific research, and it was said that the results were rather good. The Essence Energy Compression Accelerator he created played an important role in the initial defense of Luoyang. However, due to the excessive expenditure of Essence crystals, he didn't see the Essence Energy Compression Accelerator again in the subsequent battles. As in Jing, who was impersonating Zhou, stayed in the military all year round, ordinary students couldn't recognize Zhou when apart from the soldiers guarding the school. However, there were many legends about Zhou when in the school. He was considered a legendary figure in the school. When he arrived at the training grounds, Zhou couldn't help but miss the times he practiced with Li Xian, Feng Shuyan, and company. Senior, can you help me? Zhou circled the training grounds with Ye and Tsukuyumi. Just as he was about to leave, a student came in front of Zhou and said politely. Zhou glanced at the student in front of him. He was 17 or 18 years old and was likely in his second or third year. Although he wasn't as tall as Zhou, he was considered tall and handsome. What's the matter? Zhou knew that he had misunderstood him as a graduate student, but Zhou could indeed be considered his senior. The student didn't answer and instead asked Tsukuyumi, "Is this beautiful senior your girlfriend?" "No," Zhou said with a shake of his head. "She's my fiancée," Tsukuyumi added. This time, she didn't say that she was Zhou's wife. Instead, she used the word fiancé. It was unknown where she learned it from. Fiancé? Does that mean you aren't married yet? The boy's eyes lit up as he looked at Zhou and said, "Senior, please fight me. If I win, can you promise to let me have dinner at the cafeteria with you?" Zhou glanced at Tsukuyumi and saw that she wasn't angry. Then, he looked at the boy and asked, "What's your name?" This boy actually wanted to chase after a calamity creature. He was quite bold. It was unknown if he still had such guts after knowing Tsukuyumi's true identity. Chinmu. The boy's tone was very calm, but from the way he raised his brows, it was obvious that he was proud of his name, as though he was very famous. In fact, many students in the training grounds were secretly discussing as they watched. With Zhou Wen's sharp senses, he quickly figured out Qin Mu's origins. Qin Mu was a second-year student, but his strength had already reached the peak of the legendary stage. He was just half a step away from advancing to the epic stage. Although there were more dimensional creatures now, to have such achievements at this age, he was considered an outstanding elite in Sunset College. In this year's school rankings, Qin Mu had only lost to the student council president and was ranked second. From this, it was obvious how strong he was. However, other than his excellent innate talent, there was another reason why Qin Mu had such abilities. This was because Qin Mu was the younger brother of a famous female sword immortal in Luoyang. Although the female sword immortal's fame wasn't comparable to a figure like in Tianzhua, she was a well-known figure in the Federation. She had never tasted defeat in sword techniques. In the East District, when it came to sword techniques, the man was Ming Xiao, and the woman was this female sword immortal. Chapter 1160. The female sword immortal's name was Qin Zhen. Qin Mu had an especially good relationship with her, and he especially idolized her. When he was at home, Qin Zhen had always been the one teaching him. Of course, Qin Zhen teaching him was only one aspect. Qin Mu himself was indeed a genius, but he was a little too proud. Furthermore, his personality was rather rebellious. He had caused a lot of trouble in school, giving his mentor a headache. "Are you sure you want to duel me?" Zhou Wen asked Qin Mu. "You don't dare?" Qin Mu asked. "I dare, but I just find it a little unfair." Zhou Wen thought for a moment and said, "If you win, you can go on a date with her. If I win, I won't get any benefits at all. Do you think that's fair? Then if you win, I'll arrange for my sister to go on a date with you. That's fair, right?" Qin Mu said with a grin. Zhou Wen was glad that he hadn't drunk any water. Otherwise, he might have spat it out. The female sword immortal was really unlucky to have such an excellent younger brother. "How about it? Do you dare to say something?" Qin Mu continued pressing. Qin Mu was certain that Zhou Wen would agree to his request. A graduate student being provoked by a second-year student in front of his girlfriend was something he couldn't tolerate. Right here, Zhou Wen looked around and asked. Many students had already come over to watch the commotion, but they knew Qin Mu's personality very well. They were already used to it. "Right here, students, you can be our witness. Of course, if you're afraid of embarrassing yourself, we can also get a single room," Qin Mu said with a grin. "Here will do." Zhou Wen also wanted to see how the top students of Sunset College would be 5 years later and how they were compared to back then. Qin Mu took a practice sword from the weapon rack and asked Zhou Wen, "All right, I'll use a sword." "Senior, what will you use?" "Since you use a sword, I'll use a sword too," Zhou Wen said. "Don't regret your posturing." Qin Mu curled his lips and threw a practice sword at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen caught the sword and exhorted Ya, before walking to the center of the training grounds. "You are a senior. Shouldn't you give me 3 strikes first?" Qin Mu asked with a grin. "Sure." Zhou Wen nodded with a smile. "Senior, I won't stand on ceremony then." Qin Mu thought to himself, "I know all the powerful postgraduates, but I've never seen this one before. He's definitely not at the epic stage. Does he think he can beat me at the legendary stage? He really dared to let me have 3 strikes. He was simply blinded by lard. That's good too. If I get rid of you in 3 moves, I'll definitely make that senior look at me in a different light. 3 strikes aren't cool enough. Just 1 strike." Qin Mu thought about it, and still felt that killing with 1 sword was cooler and would be able to leave a better impression in the eyes of the beautiful senior. "Senior, I'm going to draw my sword." Be careful. Qin Mu was very confident in his own sword skills. Unless one's level was higher than his, there weren't many people on the same level who could dodge his sword at full power. "All right." Zhou Wen nodded with a smile. Qin Mu didn't draw his sword immediately. Instead, he took a few steps forward. Seeing that Zhou Wen didn't retreat and just stood there holding his sword, allowing him to approach, Qin Mu couldn't help but sneer to himself. You know I'm Qin Zhen's younger brother, yet you still dare to let me come so close. If you can't even block one strike, you're asking for it." When he reached the attacking distance that he was most proficient in, Qin Mu suddenly struck. That strike was like a glimpse of a swan. Coupled with his movement technique, it was unbelievably fast, but it was also very elegant. It was like an immortal controlling his sword to kill his enemies, taking their heads in the midst of an army of 10,000. Zhou couldn't help but be surprised when he saw Qin Mu's sword skill. Although Qin Mu's sword skill was fast, it was only fast enough among those of the legendary stage. In Zhou eyes, that strike was so slow that it was impossible for it to touch him. What surprised Zhou was that the sword skill was very similar to his transcendent flying immortal. It wasn't the current transcendent flying immortal, but the transcendent flying immortal he had when he was in school. Although the strike had some changes, the core part hadn't changed. Strange, why would he use my transcendent flying immortal? Zhou was puzzled. It was different from Sei Gasukai. Sei Gasukai had only observed Zhou when sword moves and sword intent before comprehending a concept similar to transcendent flying immortal. Although the two were very similar, some of the key core and details were different. However, Qin Mu's sword skill was different. His sword skill had details, and many of those details were unique to Zhou. That's strange. I've never taught anyone my sword skill, much less anyone with the surname Qin. Why does this Qin Mu know my sword skill? Zhou was puzzled. Qin Mu had originally wanted to defeat Zhou with one strike. He had used 90% of his strength in that strike, and its speed was astonishingly fast. However, to his surprise, the practice sword in Zhou's hand actually blocked Qin Mu's sword, preventing him from succeeding. Qin Mu was slightly surprised. He didn't expect this inconspicuous graduate student to be able to block the sword skill that his sister had taught him. Let's see how many strikes you can block. Seeing that Zhou didn't react, Qin Mu thought that he had used all his strength to block his attack, and that he no longer had the ability to counterattack. Therefore, he launched a storm-like attack. Strike after strike, Qin Mu's sword skill was elegant and ruthless. It was indeed a rare sword skill. Zhou finally understood after watching a few strikes. This sword skill was indeed the transcendent flying immortal he had used in school back then. However, it had been modified by someone and had indeed reached a very high realm. It was much stronger than Zhou's transcendent flying immortal back then, but the core hadn't changed. It could be considered a variant of transcendent flying immortal. However, Zhou still couldn't recall when he had taught sword skills to someone with the surname Qin. After more than 10 strikes, Zhou had seen through Qin Mu's sword skill. There was no need to continue, so he struck out and sent Qin Mu's practice sword flying. "Looks like I've won." Zhou placed his practice sword back on the rack and asked Qin Mu, "Who taught you your sword skill?" "My sister." Qin Mu thought of Qin Zhen and what he had said to Zhou. He immediately felt that something was amiss. If Zhou really asked to go on a date with Qin Zhen, Qin Mu wouldn't dare to tell Qin Zhen even if he had 2 more guts. The reason he had said that was because he had never thought that he would lose. However, on second thought, Qin Mu's girlfriend was here. It was unlikely that he would ask to go on a date with his sister, right? Where did your sister learn her sword skill from? Zhou wanted to figure out where Qin Zhen had learned transcendent flying immortal. "Why are you asking?" Qin Mu asked as he sized up Zhou warily. He thought that Zhou was eyeing Qin Zhen's sword skill. "Didn't you say that you would arrange for me to go on a date with your sister? Can we do it today?" Zhou wanted to meet the female sword immortal, Qin Zhen, and asked her where she had learned transcendent flying immortal. Chapter 1161. Qin Mu's face darkened. He obviously didn't dare bring Zhou to his sister. Furthermore, he never expected that this senior would really dare to look for his sister. Putting aside the fact that his girlfriend was here, just the fact that his sister was a sword immortal was enough to scare off many suitors. Most men would not have the courage to stand in front of his sister. However, when Qin Mu thought about it again, he realized that he had seen many outstanding men, but when they were in front of his sister, all of them would lose their confidence very quickly. They would be a loss after a few sentences because Qin Zhan's aura was simply too strong. Even if he really brought Zhou Wen to see Qin Zhan, Zhou Wen probably wouldn't dare say anything in front of Qin Zhan. Maybe he could get away with it. "Senior, are you really going to meet my sister?" Qin Mu asked Zhou Wen. "Isn't that what we agreed on?" Zhou Wen said, "All right, Qin Mu, am willing to admit defeat. I'll bring you there now. Follow me if you have the guts." After Qin Mu said that, he walked out of the training ground. Zhou Wen looked at Tsukuyami and saw that she didn't have any special reaction. Only then did he feel at ease and follow with her in his arms. Tsukuyami followed behind. As for the students who liked to join the fun, they followed behind, as though they wanted to see if Zhou Wen would really date the female sword immortal. She was a goddess that many boys in the school had crush on. Qin Mu walked in front for a while and saw that Zhou Wen had really followed him. Furthermore, he had brought two beauties with him. He couldn't help asking in bewilderment, "Don't tell me you're planning to bring them to meet my sister?" "Can't I?" Zhou Wen asked. "Sure, of course you can, as long as you like it." Qin Mu thought to himself, "Is this fellow stupid? If you bring a woman to see my sister, you'll definitely be kicked out. But that's good too. At that time, my sister won't have the mood to take care of me." Qin Zhan was a tutor at Sunset College. He lived on campus and didn't need to leave. Luoyang now enjoyed a high status in the Federation, and Sunset College had long been famous throughout the Federation. Ignoring the fact that the league president had once studied at Sunset College, just Luoyang's present strength was enough to contend with the six families. It was just that these powerful figures did not completely belong to the Yin clan. Otherwise, the Yin clan might be able to become the seventh great clan. Qin Mu quickly led the trio to Qin Zhan's residence, but the place surprised Zhou Wen. "Four Seasons Garden. Your sister lives here?" Zhou Wen asked as he looked at the building in front of him. This was the Four Seasons Garden that the special admission students used to live in, and the building that Qin Zhan lived in was the one that he used to live in. Although many of the small buildings in Four Seasons Garden had been rebuilt, the three buildings in the last row didn't seem to have changed much. They looked the same as when he was here. "That's right. Are you going in?" Qin Mu asked Zhou Wen with a grin. He was now very relaxed. Zhou Wen was holding the hand of a 7-year-old girl, and behind him was a beauty in her 20s. As long as he told Qin Zhan that this man wanted to hit on her, with Qin Ji's temper, the outcome would be obvious. "Why not?" Zhou Wen asked. "All right, wait for me. I'll bring you to see my sister now." Qin Mu pushed open the courtyard door and walked in. When he reached the front of the small building, he rang the doorbell. "Sister, are you there?" Qin Mu shouted at the visual doorbell. "What are you doing here?" A cold female voice came from inside. She sounded young, but her attitude was very cold. "There's a senior who wants to get to know you. I brought him over to meet you," Qin Mu said as he turned his body to the side, allowing Qin Zhan to see Zhou Wen standing behind him through the video. "By the way, senior, what's your name?" Only then did Qin Mu want to know. He didn't even know Zhou Wen's name. Zhou Wen ignored him and only looked at the door. He didn't use Truth Listener to scan the situation inside. After all, she was a woman and not an enemy. It would be too impolite to do so. Seeing that Zhou Wen didn't answer, Qin Mu asked again. Before Zhou Wen could answer, the door to the building opened and a young woman in her 20s walked out. She was wearing a combat suit produced by the Yin family, outlining her perfect figure. Although she wasn't too tall, her figure was very well proportioned. When Zhou Wen saw the woman's face, he immediately found her a little familiar. After some thought, he immediately remembered where she had learned transcendent flying immortal. I never expected that the silent and introverted junior from back then would have become a famous female sword immortal in the Federation. Zhou Wen sighed inwardly. Back then, he had seen a junior with considerable talent in the sword Dao, so he had given her some of the scattered notes he had taken while practicing transcendent flying immortal. Zhou Wen didn't take this matter to heart and had long forgotten about it. Furthermore, he never expected that the junior would be able to cultivate transcendent flying immortal to such a level with the scattered notes in the notebook. She had even become a famous female sword immortal. If it wasn't for Zhou Wen's strong memory, he wouldn't have believed it after recalling it and realizing that Qin Jun was the junior from back then. When Qin Mu saw Qin Jun walk out, he thought that Qin Jun wanted to send Zhou Wen away. Therefore, he fanned the flames and said, "Sister, let me introduce you. This senior wants to go on a date with you. And this is his fiancée. I don't know what relationship this little sister has with them." Senior, could she be your daughter? Qin Mu was secretly pleased with himself. He felt that Qin Jun would definitely teach this reckless senior a lesson. As he expected, Qin Jun walked straight towards Zhou Wen like the wind. Qin Mu was already beginning to worry for Zhou Wen. If Qin Jun was too heavy-handed and crippled him, it would be difficult to explain to the school. Just as he was thinking about it, Qin Jun had already arrived in front of Zhou Wen. Qin Mu thought that Qin Jun's terrifying attack would follow, but he saw Qin Jun stop in front of Zhou Wen. He did not draw his sword, nor did he attack. What was even more unbelievable was that Qin Jun's face revealed an expression that Qin Mu had never seen before. The expression was indescribable. It seemed to be pleasantly surprised, but also a little helpless. The current Qin Jun couldn't see the baleful aura and arrogance of a female sword immortal at all. Instead, she was like a girl next door, standing in front of a big brother who had a crush on her. Heavens, is there something wrong with my eyes? That can't be the goddess of my dreams. Qin Jun, right? How could she have such an expression? The male students who came to watch the show were all dumbfounded when they saw Qin Jun's expression. Qin Mu was so shocked that he couldn't even speak. As a younger brother, he had never seen this side of Qin Jun. Senior. Qin Jun lowered her head and called out shyly. It was as if she had turned back into the shy and introverted junior from back then. Heavens, please strike me with lightning. I don't want to live anymore. Tell me that's not sword immortal Qin Jun. It's definitely not. Many male students wanted to kill Zhou Wen. How could their goddess show such an expression to another man? It was absolutely unforgivable. Chapter 1162. Sister, this person has a fiancé. Qin Mu hurriedly reminded Qin Jun. However, Qin Jun ignored Qin Mu as if he hadn't heard anything. Your swordsmanship is quite good. Zhou Wen praised Qin Jun. His words came from the bottom of his heart. To be able to cultivate his sword technique to such a level with just a notebook was indeed extraordinary. Even though he had never seen Qin Jun use a sword, he could roughly guess just by looking at the Qin Mu she taught. Only Zhou Wen could say the word not bad. In the eyes of others, it wasn't as simple as not bad. Upon hearing Zhou Wen's words, the students and Qin Mu had the urge to roll their eyes. Did the female sword immortal's sword techniques need his praise? Moreover, what did he mean by not bad? Was this a compliment or a scolding? Senior, you flatter me. There are still many shortcomings in my swordsmanship. If it weren't for your guidance, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. Qin Jun said seriously. Hearing Qin Jun's words, the entire campus seemed to explode. Qin Mu's eyes widened as he stared at Zhou Wen in disbelief. Who is this person? Qin Jun actually said that his swordsmanship was taught by him? Is there such an amazing person in our academy? In terms of sword arts, perhaps only Overseer and Chancellor Lung can guide female sword immortals. However, this person is so young. He's definitely not Chancellor Lung or Overseer, and I think Qin Jun is just being polite. This person might be your first teacher. Yes, that must be it, but he is not that old. He is not much older than Qin Jun. How could he be Qin Jun's first teacher? What is this senior's name? No one knows him? While everyone was talking, Qin Jun continued, Senior, there are still many things I don't understand about my swordsmanship. Can you give me some pointers? I'm willing to pay any price. As soon as he said that, everyone was dumbfounded. Qin Jun, the female sword immortal of the Federation, actually wanted him to give her some pointers on her swordsmanship. This was definitely not something a teacher could do. The only possibility was that this person's swordsmanship was stronger than that of the female sword immortal, Qin Jun, and not just by a little bit. Who is he? Could it be the legendary bright swordsman, Ming Xiao? I heard that Ming Xiao used to study at our school. Maybe she taught Qin Jun at that time. It's not Professor Ming. It's not like we haven't seen Professor Ming's photo before. This senior isn't as delicate as Ming Xiu. Ming Xiu might not necessarily be stronger than Qin Jun, right? Sister, who exactly is this senior? Qin Mu stammered. This is Senior Zhou 1. You don't even know him? Qin Jun finally heard Qin Mu's words and replied. Zhou? He's the Zhou 1 who was once invincible among his generation and suppressed the younger generation of the 6 great families. Damn, so it's him. No wonder. I just didn't expect Qin Jun to have learned his swordsmanship from him. I heard that he has been suppressing Chess Mountain for the past few years. It's no wonder he looks unfamiliar. Upon hearing Qin Jun say Zhou Wen's name, many students felt relieved. Although Zhou Wen wasn't on campus most of the time, he was one of the legends of Sunset College. Follow me, Zhou Wen said to Qin Jun before turning to leave. Qin Jun immediately followed without any hesitation. Everyone wanted to follow, but Zhou Wen and company quickly left the school. They couldn't leave. Zhou Wen brought Qin Jun to the family's training room and let him practice his sword techniques. They were stronger than Zhou Wen had imagined. Qin Jun's talent and concept in sword techniques were better than Zhou Wen had imagined. Wait a moment. Zhou Wen took out a pen and paper from the chaos bead. He planned on writing down his experience with Transcendent Flying Immortal and giving it to Qin Jun. Zhou Wen didn't care if his sword techniques would spread. If someone could learn his sword techniques, he hoped that there would be a few more people like Qin Jun among humans. Unfortunately, Transcendent Flying Immortal had extremely high requirements for cultivators. It was difficult to get started, and it was even more difficult to achieve anything. It wasn't suitable for most people. Sei Gasakai had also fused the concept of Transcendent Flying Immortal into the Two Heavens flow, making it easy for people to learn. Although that solved the problem of most people finding it difficult to get started, it also indirectly increased the difficulty of reaching the peak. To Zhou Wen, a person like Qin Jun was considered a sword art inheritor that could only be chanced upon. He's getting more and more unruly. Doesn't he know that it's already mealtime? Even if he isn't hungry, doesn't he know that children need to eat more when they need to grow? At night, Tianzua sat at the dining table and saw Sheng and Jing sitting by his side. He frowned, and Sheng hurriedly said, Overseer, young master when brought a guest back. He's busy in the training room. What guest is more important than Er's body? If he wants to entertain the guest, why can't he let come back for dinner? And Tianzua snorted coldly. I just called you. She said she's not hungry, and Sheng said. And Tianzua couldn't help but frown. After a pause, he asked, Who did he bring back? It's Qin Jun, and Sheng answered. Qin Jun. And Tianzua was slightly taken aback. Is it the female sword immortal from the college? Yes, Overseer. What are they doing in the training room? And Tianzua asked. I'm not sure about that. Perhaps they're sparring, and Sheng said. And Tianzua wasn't unfamiliar with the name Qin Jun. There were very few experts from Sunset College. Hui Haifeng, Feng Qiuyan, Li Xian, and Wei Ge were all very famous figures in the league. However, there weren't many who were truly willing to stay in Sunset College for the family in Luoyang. Hui Haifeng was now the league president, and Feng Qiuyan was the pride of the Sea Return Feng family. Although Li Xian's Li family was a local wealthy family in Luoyang, Li Mabai was now in charge. He wasn't someone to be trifled with. Sometimes, even Tianzua had a headache over him. Li Xian was often away and only returned a few times a year. There was no need to mention Wei Ge. He was in charge of the Special Investigation Bureau and was the eyes and ears of the League. Now that he had joined the League of Defender, it was even more impossible for him to be used by the family. Among the experts who stayed in the college, Qin Jun was the best. However, Tianzua had always believed that Qin Jun was more suitable for the battlefield and not staying on campus to teach. Therefore, he had personally persuaded Qin Jun to join the army many times, but she rejected him. Through their interaction, Tianzua knew that Qin Jun wasn't someone who was afraid of challenges, but for some reason, she wasn't willing to leave the college. Upon hearing that Qin Jun had followed Zhou Wen to the Yin family, and Tianzhua found it odd. After some thought, he got up and said, "Let's go take a look." And Sheng and Jing stood up and followed in Tianzhua to the training room. They were also very curious about what Zhou Wen and Qin Jun were doing. Chapter 1163. Young Master One, are you still busy? The food is ready. Overseer is here to pick up Monsieur. Why don't you let Monsieur go back for her meal first? And Sheng came to the training room and pressed the doorbell. Before Zhou Wen finished writing, he got to open the door for Sheng and company. Opened the door, and Tianzhua and company looked inside. Indeed, they saw Qin Jun standing inside. However, what puzzled Tianzhua and company was that Qin Jun and company weren't sparring with their sword techniques. They didn't even look like they had. Instead, Zhou Wen was standing in front of a table and writing. As for Qin Jun, she was watching intently. Does this punk know calligraphy? And Tianzhua was puzzled. Writing beautiful words was not a difficult task for humans of their level and level of evolution. They didn't even need much practice. All they needed to do was see some famous works, and it was very easy to imitate beautiful words. However, good words didn't mean good calligraphy. One needed to infuse one's thoughts into the words to form a unique style. Only then could it be called calligraphy. And Tianzhua secretly glanced at it and realized that although Zhou Wen's words weren't ugly, they definitely weren't good. It was such an ordinary word, but Qin Jun was engrossed in it as she stood there motionless. Since it's not a problem with the words, it should be the content. And Tianzhua was just about to see what Zhou Wen had written when Zhou Wen had already finished writing. Putting away the pen, Zhou Wen picked up the book and handed it to Qin Jun. "Take a look. Can I?" Qin Jun didn't dare take it. She had watched Zhou Wen finish writing. Although Zhou Wen had written too quickly and the content was too profound, Qin Jun had only roughly glanced at many parts without reading them carefully. However, just the content she saw made Qin Jun understand that what Zhou Wen had given her wasn't a sword technique notebook with a few words, but a real systematic sword technique. Furthermore, there was some of Zhou Wen's own experience. The value of this book made Qin Jun hesitate. Of course, sword techniques are created for people to use. If you can learn it, take it, Zhou Wen said indifferently. Qin Jun looked at Zhou Wen and saw that his expression was the same as when he had given her the notebook back then. She couldn't help but fall into a daze as she reached out to take the transcendent, flying immortal that Zhou Wen had written. And Tianzhua also understood that what Zhou Wen had written was likely some kind of sword technique. From Qin Jun's solemn expression, it was probably no trifling matter. However, and Tianzhua didn't know if the sword technique Zhou Wen had written was his own or from somewhere. And Tianzhua wanted to know, but he refused to ask. And Sheng didn't have any qualms as he said with a smile, "Young Master Wen, are you very familiar with Sword Immortal Qin? Even sword techniques can be studied together?" Before Zhou Wen could say a word, Qin Jun said with a serious expression, "Adjutant, don't joke around. I'm not qualified to study sword arts with Senior. Senior Zhou is my mentor. All my sword techniques were taught by him." With that said, and Tianzhua and Jing exchanged looks. Qin Jun could be said to be one of the most outstanding women in Sunset College in recent years. She was the kind that could be recorded in the school's history. She actually said that her sword techniques were taught by Zhou Wen, but they all knew that Zhou Wen had disappeared for 5 years. How could he have taught Qin Jun's sword techniques? However, and Xing didn't care about that. His eyes darted around as he said to Qin Jun, since you learned your sword techniques from young Master Wen, you should focus on actual combat. Are you interested in joining the Sunset Army? On the one hand, you can protect everyone, and on the other hand, you could train your sword techniques." Qin Jun didn't answer as she looked at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen glared at Sheng and said, "My sword techniques do focus on actual combat, but actual combat is extremely risky. I might lose my life if I'm not careful. As for the choice, it's best to follow your heart and not be influenced by others." And Sheng smiled without a word, pretending not to see Zhou Wen's gaze. Qin Jin thought for a moment and asked in Sheng, "Can I go where Senior went in the past?" "Of course, but it's very dangerous," and Sheng said seriously. "I'm not afraid of danger," Qin Jin said. "Then it's settled. Sword Immortal Qin, the Overseer has already prepared a meal. Why don't you have a meal with young Master Wen?" And Sheng said. Qin Jin nodded slightly as a form of agreement, and Tianzhua was somewhat delighted to see Qin Ji agree. It was a waste for a talent like Qin Jun to stay in school to teach. After she trained in the military for a few years, she would definitely become a powerful person who could stand her own ground. However, he had failed to convince Qin Jun despite having invited her so many times. Now, Qin Jun had clearly joined the Sunset Army for Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen didn't even say a word. This left Tianzhua very displeased. However, this didn't stop him from liking Qin Jun. He had already thought of how to train Qin Jun, how to make her a true female sword immortal on the battlefield and not just in the arena. Although both represented superb combat strength, there were still some differences. At the dining table, under Sheng's guidance, Qin Jun recounted the process of her learning the sword from Zhou Wen. It left Tianzhua and Jing stunned. Does that punk really have good taste? Or is his luck that good? He casually got a crappy notebook and actually managed to produce a female sword immortal? It must be luck. That punk might just like her because she's pretty, and Tianzhua couldn't accept the fact that the person he thought highly of had been unintentionally nurtured by Zhou Wen. After the meal, Sheng got someone to send Qin Jin back. However, Zhou Wen stopped Sheng and pulled him to a secluded spot. "It's not easy to find a successor for my sword technique. I don't want to see her die. Young Master One, don't worry. Qin Jin's talent is extraordinary. She just lacks the baptism of the battlefield. In the future, she will definitely become an existence like a Valkyrie. Overseer has already made plans for her. He definitely won't let such a person's sacrifice be in vain." And Sheng paused before saying, "Furthermore, in this world with Qin Jin's strength, it's only a matter of time before she enters the battlefield. It's better earlier than later, don't you think?" Zhou Wen naturally understood this logic. All he could do was sigh helplessly without saying a word. He had no choice either. He didn't know how long he could live. And Sheng was right. By letting Qin Jin join the Sunset Army, she would have Sheng's care and Tianzhua's appreciation. It was better than being forced to participate in battle in the future. "Young Master One, I realize that there's something wrong with you." And Sheng suddenly sized up Zhou Wen and said in a strange tone. Zhou Wen felt his hair stand on end from Sheng's gaze. "Ah, Sheng, don't spout nonsense. What problem can I have?" Chapter 1164. We're already so familiar with each other. "Young Master Wen, just admit it honestly." "I won't tell anyone," and Sheng said with a wink. "What should I admit?" Zhou Wen's heart skipped a beat as he thought to himself. Could it be that Sheng has discovered the secret of the phone? "You're actually a reincarnator, right?" And Sheng whispered. "What reincarnator? Is it a certain level? Or a guardian?" Zhou Wen asked in a daze. "Still pretending?" "A reincarnator is someone who has lived once and returned to the past." "Young Master Wen, you are a reincarnator, right?" "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone," and Sheng said. Zhou Wen finally understood what Sheng meant. He was at a loss whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Have you been watching too much television recently and been brainwashed by it?" And Sheng said with a smile, "Young Master One, if you aren't a reincarnator, how can you do so many things that seem like you can predict the future?" "What did I do to predict the future?" Zhou Wen asked in puzzlement, and Sheng counted them one by one. "You became Wang Mingyuan's disciple. Then, he entered the dimension and became an overlord of it. You have a good relationship with Wang Mingyuan's disciples. Now that Hui Haifeng has become the Alliance's president and has developed the mythical liquid, it's like he's turned on. Zhongzia is very likely the president of the Holy Spirit Association. That fellow, Lu Yun, has footprints all over Earth and has entered countless mysterious dimensions. Who knows how many benefits he has stolen? He's known as the #1 godly thief." What's more outrageous is that you have a good relationship with Li Xian. Li Xian is now almost undying. Furthermore, he has an extremely good relationship with the Dugu family and has great influence. Feng Xiuyan and Ming Xiu both regard you as their master. Now, they are known as the Sword and Saber Duo. They are famous in the Federation and are the idols of young swordsmen and sabers. What's even more outrageous is that you casually threw away a notebook and created a female sword immortal. Do you dare say that you aren't a reincarnator? You must have known that they were extremely talented, so you formed a relationship with them early on, right? Ah Sheng, I think it's a waste of talent if you don't write novels with your imagination. Zhou didn't explain as he turned and left. In fact, Zhou couldn't explain either. He thought about it and realized that he was really a reincarnator. It's just a joke. Young Master Wen, don't be angry. And Sheng chased after him. He was indeed joking. How could there be someone who had been reborn in this world? However, Zhou Wen's past was indeed buggy. Tsukuyumi sat in the stone pavilion of the small courtyard with her phone in her hand, but she didn't look at it. Instead, she stared blankly at the moon in the sky and sat motionless for a long time. After a long while, Tsukuyumi retracted her gaze and sighed softly as she muttered to herself, "Do I really have to leave?" As she muttered to herself, Tsukuyumi switched on her phone and looked at Zhou Wen's number in the chat app. After clicking on it, she typed some words, but she felt that something was amiss. Then, she deleted them. She then wrote some more words before deleting them again. After repeating this a few times, Tsukuyumi ultimately didn't send the message and switched off her phone. This is my life, so why do I have to do so many things? Tsukuyumi put down her phone and stared blankly at the sky. She knew that she didn't have much time left. In the middle of the night, an urgent piece of information was placed on Tianzua's desk. And Tianzua read it over and over again with a solemn expression. "Overseer, did something really happen in Netherworld City?" And Sheng rushed over in a hurry. He didn't even have the time to button his clothes properly. This was almost impossible to happen to Sheng. Even at the brink of life and death, he would keep himself clean and meticulous. He wouldn't panic even if the sky collapsed. And Tianzua's expression was gloomy as he nodded slightly and said, "Missing. Everyone is missing. The people we sent found Netherworld City and saw the camp where my mother and company were stationed, but there wasn't a single person there. From the traces at the scene, for some reason, they all entered Netherworld City." "Did they enter Netherworld City to look for them?" And Sheng hurriedly asked. "They went in, but they didn't see a single person." And Tianzua said, "That's impossible. Madam and company are already very familiar with the situation in Netherworld City. Even if they were forced to enter, it's impossible for them to all die in such a short period of time." And Sheng said in disbelief, "Indeed, there's no one. It's as if they have vanished in a thin air." As Tianzua spoke, he stood up and calmly said, "Go and prepare. I'm going to Netherworld City. Also, don't tell Jing about this." After a pause, and Tianzua added, "Don't tell that punk either. Young Master Wen knows Netherworld City very well. If he were to accompany us, the chances of saving Madam will be much higher," and Sheng said. "His surname isn't in, nor is he my mother's biological son. He has no obligation to take the risk for us." And Tianzua said, "But," and Sheng was about to say something when he was interrupted by Tianzua. "No buts. Go and prepare. Do as I say and prepare everything as soon as possible. I have to set off before noon today." And Tianzua waved his hand and gestured for Sheng to prepare. Yes, and Sheng could only leave to prepare. And Sheng hesitated again and again before finally coming to Zhou Wen's courtyard and telling him about the matter. After Zhou Wen heard that, his expression turned extremely solemn. Ouyang Lan and company had long understood the situation in Netherworld City. Even if they were forced to enter, they should be able to come out. Even if they couldn't come out, it was impossible for them to all die so quickly. Now that they were nowhere to be seen, Zhou Wen thought of a terrifying possibility. Could it be that they experienced all the punishments and saw the real Netherworld? Zhou Wen's expression flickered. Zhou Wen remembered City, Lord Netherworld's words very clearly. The Netherworld city he saw now wasn't the real Netherworld city. Only after experiencing all the punishments could one enter the real Netherworld. Zhou didn't know what the real Netherworld was like, but he was certain that it was definitely not a good place. Ah Sheng, I'm going out. Help me take care of this place. Zhou originally wanted to make Yer stay, but to his surprise, Yer looked at him. Zhou knew from her eyes that it was impossible to make her stay. Young Master One, go to Netherworld City with Overseer. We can take care of each other, Sheng said. No, I'm not going to Netherworld City. I'm going to the South District first, Zhou said. South District? And Sheng was slightly taken aback, unsure what Zhou meant. If I'm not wrong, if I want to save Sislan, I have to find someone to go with me, Zhou said. Who? And Sheng hurriedly asked. Li Xian. Zhou knew that he had to find Li Xian as soon as possible and get him to go to Netherworld City with him. If he wasted too much time, it would be useless even if he entered the real Netherworld. Chapter 1165. The dimensionalization of Earth was very serious. Even a mythical expert wouldn't be able to travel from the East District to the South District as easily as 5 years ago. Even if everything went smoothly, it would probably take at least half a month for them to make a round trip. Thankfully, Zhou was proficient in spatial teleportation and had a spatial-type calamity-grade expert, Tsukuyami, by his side. Zhou spatial teleportation ability wasn't enough to support such long-distance accurate positioning, much less teleport Yer and company with him. However, to the calamity-grade Tsukuyami, teleporting them to the Dugu family's vicinity in the South District was just a matter of waving her hand. As he didn't know where Li Xian was, Zhou could only make a trip to the Dugu family and find Worm Dugu to ask where Li Xian was. The Dugu family was known as the most cowardly family. Even the Dugu family's ancestral mansion was built directly in a dimensional zone. The large-scale breakout of dimensional creatures didn't affect the Dugu family much. The dimensional zone where the Dugu family's ancestral mansion was located was called Myriad Elephant Valley. There were no elephants here, but the valley was bizarre. Without the guidance of the Dugu family, even a mythical expert might not be able to walk out their entire lives and be trapped to death in Myriad Elephant Valley. At that moment, a man and a woman stood outside Myriad Elephant Valley with a little girl, a golden eagle, and a white antelope. They were planning the stone monument outside Myriad Elephant Valley. This group of people was naturally Zhou and Tsukuyami. The chick and antelope had also followed. Zhou had asked them to stay in the family, but they refused to listen. There was a stone monument erected outside Myriad Elephant Valley. On the left side of the stone monument were the words, "Heaven doesn't answer, Earth doesn't answer." On the right side were the words, "Life of Solitude." Zhou looked at it for a long time and found the monument somewhat strange. It wasn't a couplet, nor was it a poem. It was awkward no matter how he looked at it. If it's Life of Dugu, it might be a genus name, but the word solitary is different from the Dugu family surname. It shouldn't be a person's name. Zhou looked outside Myriad Elephant Valley for a long time, but he didn't see a single member of the Dugu family. However, Zhou's eyes and ears were extremely sharp. He had long discovered that there were many strange creatures lurking around. There were goo that resembled sand, as well as dimensional creatures that resembled grass. The seemingly peaceful entrance of the Wanxiang Valley was, in fact, filled with killing intent. It was just that those strange creatures had not received their master's orders, so they did not attack. "I'm Zhou, a friend of Worm Dugu. I specially came to visit," Zhou shouted into the valley. "Are you Luoyang's and family, Zhou?" A voice sounded from the valley, but there was still no one in sight. "I came from Luoyang, but my surname isn't in. My name is Zhou," Zhou said. "Why do you want to see my second master?" The voice rang out again. "I have something to ask you." Zhou was slightly taken aback when he heard the term second master. Then, he recalled that Worm Dugu was ranked second in his generation. Dugu called him second uncle, so it was likely that this second master was how a junior addressed him. "What is it?" the voice asked again. "I can only tell you this when I meet Worm Dugu," Zhou said with a frown. "Second master is not at home. You can go back, the person in the valley said again. Where did he go? Zhouwen was somewhat depressed when he heard that. If Worm Dugu wasn't around, it would be even harder to find Li Xian. He couldn't wait that long. I don't know, the voice in the valley said. If I can't find Li Xian, I can only try to suffer the punishment of Netherworld City myself. Zhouwen was somewhat depressed. He had tried the punishment of Netherworld City. If he didn't use Great Brahma to cheat, Zhouwen wasn't confident that he could survive all the punishments. However, if he used Great Brahma to cheat, he wouldn't be able to open the true entrance to the Netherworld. Therefore, it was best if he could find Li Xian. If he couldn't, Zhouwen could only give it a try himself. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly heard a bang. He turned his head and saw a man covered in blood rush out of Myriad Elephant Valley and fall to the ground at the valley entrance. Save me. I know where Second Master is. The man seemed to use the last of his strength to shout at Zhouwen before fainting. Zhouwen immediately could tell that the person's injuries weren't simple. He was on the verge of death. It wasn't as simple as fainting. Many goo could be seen crawling around his body. His heart and other organs were already riddled with holes. It was already a miracle that he could survive until now. Zhouwen originally didn't plan on offending the Dugu family, but there was something fishy about this matter. Furthermore, the person said that he knew Worm Dugu's whereabouts. As Zhouwen was watching, a swarm of worms suddenly flew out of Myriad Elephant Valley like black fog and swept towards the unconscious man. Zhouwen summoned the bronze sparrow sword and got it to fly over. Wherever the flames passed, large swaths of worms were immediately burned to death. This is a matter of our Dugu family. It has nothing to do with you. The voice in the valley sounded again. Your Dugu family's matters indeed have nothing to do with me, but he knows Worm Dugu's whereabouts. When he wakes up and tells me Worm Dugu's whereabouts, I'll return him to you, Zhouwen said as he walked towards the unconscious man. The man's condition was already terrible. His body was on the brink of collapse from the goose bites. He was just a few more breaths than a dead person. He needed immediate treatment. He doesn't know where Second Master is. He just wants to use you to escape, the voice in the valley said. We'll know if it's true or not once we ask. Zhouwen stood in front of the man and began engraving the ancient Sovereign Sutra on the Wheel of Destiny. In his current situation, ordinary healing abilities were useless. Even if he used rejuvenation pills, they could only heal some wounds. However, the goo in his body were still there, so it was useless to only heal wounds. Only the ancient Sovereign Sutra could heal this man under such circumstances and remove all the goo in his body. It's not your place to decide on the Dugu family's matters. Zhouwen was just about to help the man up when he saw another person rush out of Myriad Elephant Valley. Zhouwen took a careful look and saw that the person had a black veil over his face. His entire body was wrapped tightly in clothes, making it impossible to see his appearance. He only knew that he was a man. Zhouwen, I've heard of your name. You're indeed an impressive person. However, this is a matter of my Dugu family. If you insist on interfering, even if our Dugu family isn't willing, we can only treat you as an enemy and treat you with all our might. At the same time, the black-robed man appeared. A large number of goo flew out with him. It was unknown how many there were, and there were many types. There weren't just a single species. If you believe our Dugu family, I can guarantee with the Dugu family's reputation that this traitor doesn't know Worm Dugu's whereabouts. He just wants to use you, the black-robed man added. Zhouwen felt that what the black-robed man said made sense, but he didn't plan on returning the man. Whether it was true or not, he had to personally ask. Chapter 1166. Zhouwen extended his hand to grab the unconscious man. Without any hesitation, the black-robed man ordered a large number of goo to pounce at the unconscious man. Like a sandstorm, they were everywhere. The characteristics of the goo were completely different. If it were an ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't be able to take care of so many goo. Before Zhouwen could move, the chick let out a long cry. The countless goo instantly fell from the sky. Although they didn't die, they lay on the ground, trembling, completely ignoring his commands. The black-robed man's pupils constricted as he repeatedly urged the goo, but it was completely useless. Even the mythical goo were silent as they trembled on the ground. No matter how he urged them, there was no reaction. The black-robed man bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He wanted to use his blood essence to power the goo, but the goo remained motionless. How is this possible? The black-robed man was alarmed. The goo were connected to his life and death. He forcefully spat out his blood essence and essence energy to stimulate his potential, making the goo feel threatened. They would definitely resist to the death. Even if they encountered a natural enemy, they would fight to the death. However, no matter how much he stimulated his body's potential, the goo remained motionless. All they did was tremble. Zhou had already grabbed the unconscious man by the collar with one hand and lifted him up. Zhou, do you know that our Xia family and the Yin family have been working together for many years? Are you really going to destroy the trust and relationship that the two families have built over the years because of a traitor's lies? The black-robed man paused for a moment before continuing. Besides, he has already been poisoned by many goo. It's impossible for him to survive. Is it worth it for a dying person? Hand it back to me. Our Dugu family will think of a way to contact Second Master. You just need to wait for a while. I've already told you that my surname isn't in. Besides, if our relationship is so easily severed, there's no need to maintain it. Zhou looked at the man in his hand and continued. Most importantly, I don't have that much patience. With that said, Zhou stabbed at the man's body with his other hand. The 5 fingers that were like sharp blades stabbed into the man's body with resplendent light. His hand was like a blade, bringing with it many strings as he continuously slashed at the man's body. When the black-robed man saw Zhou do this, he imagined that he was going to personally finish off the unconscious man. He said with a smile, "A wise man who delays time is a wise man. The Duga family will remember your friendship. We will find Second Master's whereabouts as soon as possible." Before he could finish speaking, his smile froze on his face, and his eyes were filled with shock. Zhou's final punch landed on the unconscious man. The goo that had burrowed into his body were all sent flying. Even the brain-boring worm that had burrowed into his brain was no exception. The moment those goo worms were shaken out, the bird spat out a mouthful of golden flames, directly burning those goo worms to ashes. The man in black clearly saw that Zhou's attack had beaten the man to a pulp. There was no way he could survive, but the man's injuries rapidly healed. Moments later, he was like a normal person. The wounds on his body were completely gone. The unconscious man had already woken up. He landed on the ground and got up. He looked at his body in surprise and delight. Zhou, our Duga family is being attacked by a group of unknown people. Second Master and the rest are trapped in Myriad Elephant Valley. The man anxiously shouted at Zhou. Is that so? Zhou frowned as he looked at the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man wasn't flustered at all. He said with a smile, "Don't tell me you're listening to the nonsense of a traitor. Does that mean the Dugu family is fine?" Zhou asked. "It's not fine. It's just that this traitor caused trouble. Everything will be fine once we capture him," the black-robed man said. Zhou, don't believe him. He's not from our Dugu family at all. The man said anxiously. Aren't your methods too inferior? Are you trying to instigate Zhou to become enemies with our Dugu family so that you can take advantage of the chaos to escape? It's useless. You're also a member of the Dugu family. You should know what the Dugu family is capable of, the black-robed man said indifferently. Just as the man was about to say something, Zhou interrupted him and said, "Since the Dugu family is fine, I'll take him in to take a look. If he's a traitor, I'll personally hand him over to Worm Dugu." "All right, let's do that. I'll go in with you." The man was delighted when he heard that and hurriedly expressed his attitude. Of course, the black-robed man agreed without any hesitation. He even looked at the man and sneered. "Dugabusha, I'm afraid you are wrong to use such methods to sow discord between our Duga family and Zhou. Zhou and Second Master are best friends. So what if we let him enter Myriad Elephant Valley?" However, Dugabusha said to Zhou, "Zhou, you have to be careful. He must have set up an ambush for us to enter the valley. Your name is Dugabusha? Zhou didn't know who was telling the truth and who was lying, but the name Dugabusha resounded in his ears. This person was very famous in the Dugu family. He wasn't originally called that because he had condensed a life providence called God of Immortality. Later, he gained the nickname Dugabusha, perhaps because the name God of Immortality was too resounding. Gradually, no one remembered his original name. God of Immortality was indeed famous, but he was famous for having a useless life providence. Because of this life providence, Dugabusha couldn't even kill an ant. His life providence was destined to prevent him from being stained with blood his entire life. Yes, Dugabusha nodded. Your life providence is God of Immortality? Zhou sized up Dugabusha and felt somewhat suspicious. This was because the legendary Dugabusha was at least 40 or 50 years old. As for this man, he looked to be in his 30s. Yes, Dugabusha saw Zhou's puzzlement and explained, the primordial energy art I cultivate is a little special. I look much younger than my actual age. Perhaps this is the benefit of not killing. Zhou nodded and didn't harp on Dugabusha's identity. He looked at the black-robed man and asked, Can we enter the valley now? Of course, anytime. I still have to thank you for helping our Dugu family capture the traitor. Our Dugu family will definitely repay you. However, you have to watch Dugabusha closely. He's very sinister and cunning. Don't let him escape. As the black-robed man spoke, he made an inviting gesture before walking towards Myriad Elephant Valley. He won't be able to escape. Zhou gestured for Dugabusha to leave first. Dugabusha didn't hesitate as he gritted his teeth and walked towards Myriad Elephant Valley. He had no intention of retreating. Zhou followed Dugabusha into Myriad Elephant Valley. Yatsukimi, the chick, and the antelope followed. Chapter 1167. The Myriad Elephant Valley looked like a valley from the outside, but after entering, they realized that there was a sea of clouds in front of them. Only the continuous mountain peaks protruded above the sea of clouds. It was a magical scene. As for where Zhou and company were standing, they were astonishingly at the peak of a mountain. As far as their eyes could see, they could see palaces faintly discernible in the sea of clouds. They looked real, but also like a mirage. In the sky, the 3 suns shone together, and the 7 moons were in the sky. In the sky, there were even mountains that grew in the opposite direction, as though they were about to plunge into the sea of clouds, forming an extremely bizarre world. Zhou turned around and realized that the valley entrance they had come from had vanished. The Dugu family's old mansion was extremely mysterious. Outsiders didn't know much about it, so Zhou didn't know much about the Myriad Elephant Valley. Now that he saw such a miraculous scene, he couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. However, Zhou didn't see the scene of a huge battle, nor did he discover any traces of it. This was different from what Dugabusha had said. The truth is clear at a glance. Now, you should know who's lying, right? The black-robed man said to Zhou with a smile. Dugabusha hurriedly explained, Zhou, don't believe him. The Myriad Elephant Valley has the taboo of Myriad Elephant. Everything here is constantly changing. Everything is between the void and the real. Be it the mountain or the palaces, they will constantly change between the void and the real. Second Master and the rest are trapped in the old mansion. The old mansion is on Infinite Mountain. At this time, it should still be in an illusory state and can't be entered. However, as long as we reach Infinite Mountain, we can see the illusory Infinite Mountain and those people. Since you say so, I'll take Zhou to Infinite Mountain to take a look. Let's see how long you can continue quibbling. As the black-robed man spoke, he turned around and flew in a certain direction. Just as Zhou was about to summon a flying mount, he saw the chick flap its wings and immediately fly up. Its body grew larger in midair, and soon it was like a golden cloud. The chick chirped a few times at Zhou, as though it wanted him to sit on its back. Zhou was somewhat delighted when he saw that the chick had such a transformation ability. He got on the chick's back with you, Sukuyami and the antelope followed. Just as Dugubusha was about to come up, he was glared at by the chick. Dugubusha wasn't in the mood to fuss over this. He summoned an avian companion beast and followed. After flying for a while, Dugubusha suddenly shouted, "That's not right. He's not heading towards Boundless Mountain." That's where the man in black stopped and stared at Dugubusha with a cold smile. So that's how it is. You want to borrow Zhou Wen's power to charge into Dark Azura Hall. What a good plan. You're talking nonsense. You're heading towards Dark Azura Hall. Zhou Wen, this is the way to Boundless Mountain. You have to believe me, said Dugubusha anxiously. Zhou Wen looked at the two of them sticking to their own stories and was momentarily unable to tell who was telling the truth and who was lying. However, Zhou Wen was more willing to believe that Dugu didn't kill Some. This was because up to now, they had yet to see a second member of the Dugu family. If what the black-robed man said was the truth, why didn't the Dugu family come forward to explain for him? As long as the other members of the Dugu family came forward, they would naturally be able to convince Zhou Wen. Although Zhou Wen wasn't very knowledgeable, he still knew a few of the important figures in the Dugu family. You keep saying that the Dugu family is fine. Why don't you get the other members of the Dugu family out? Dugubusha had clearly thought of this as well. The black-robed man frowned and said, Boundless Mountain is currently in an illusory state. No one can come out. Don't tell me you're going to tell Zhou Wen that you're the only one guarding the entire Myriad Elephant Valley today, said Dugubusha coldly. The black-robed man hesitated for a moment before explaining to Zhou Wen, Today is the day of our Dugu family's grand ceremony. Apart from me guarding the pass, everyone else is at Boundless Mountain. If you don't believe me, you can go there and take a look. Didn't you say that Second Master isn't around? Now you're saying that everyone is at Boundless Mountain? Dugubusha found a loophole in the black-robed man's words. Second Master hasn't returned, so it's naturally impossible for him to participate in the grand ceremony, said the black-robed man. Zhou Wen watched the two of them exchange words. Although Dugubusha's words made sense, he couldn't completely believe them. What kind of place is Dark Azura Hall? Zhou Wen couldn't decide who to listen to as he asked after some thought. Dark Azura Hall is the most mysterious place in Myriad Elephant Valley. Extremely terrifying dimensional creatures are suppressed inside. It's a forbidden land of my Dugu family. No one is allowed to enter. In the past, members of my Dugu family mistakenly entered it, but they were never found. He lured us in because he wants to use Dark Azura Hall's power to kill us, said Dugubusha. Zhou Wen looked at the black-robed man who said, Dark Azura Hall is indeed a forbidden land of our Dugu family. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. It's extremely dangerous inside. In that case, why do you say that Dugubusha wants to charge into Dark Azura Hall? Zhou Wen asked. The black-robed man answered, Others will definitely die if they enter, but Dugubusha is different. If he enters, not only will he not die, but he will also obtain extremely terrifying power. He absolutely cannot be allowed to enter. Others will die if they enter, but I will obtain terrifying power if I enter. Isn't that a joke? Dugubusha said. The matter is rather complicated. It's difficult to explain it in a short period of time. To put it simply, it has to do with Dugubusha's life providence. If we let him enter and obtain the power of Dark Azura Hall, not only will our Dugu family suffer, but the entire Federation will also be greatly affected. Therefore, we absolutely cannot let him succeed, said the black-robed man. Zhou Wen really couldn't tell who was telling the truth. Zhou Wen, he's stalling for time. Second Master and the rest are trapped in Boundless Mountain. If we go too late, I'm afraid they will really be hopeless, Dugubusha said anxiously. Zhou Wen, I know you have a good relationship with Second Master. If you are bewitched by him and forcefully barge into Dark Azura Hall, our Dugu family will definitely suffer heavy losses. What do you want Second Master to do? The black-robed man said. What exactly is suppressed in Dark Azura Hall? Dimensional creatures? Guardians? Or something else? Zhou Wen had no choice but to continue asking. I don't know. This is a secret of our Dugu family. Only the past patriarchs know the truth, said the black-robed man. Your words are filled with loopholes. Since only the patriarch knows the truth, how do you know that I will obtain immense benefits if I enter? He's clearly stalling for time. Zhou, quickly save second master and the rest. Any later, and it will really be too late. Dugabusha wore an anxious look. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.